To my stepson, Ethan Christopher Reynolds, I leave my controlling interest in Turner Construction Company, my investment portfolio, my vacation property at Lake Tahoe, and the remainder of my estate. My blood ran cold as I heard those words. The inheritance my father had promised me my entire life was gone, given away to someone who had known him for less than 3 years. I should have seen it coming, but nothing could have prepared me for that moment in the lawyer's office when everything I thought I knew came crashing down. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Rain pounded against the windows of Wilson & Associates law firm as I sat in the waiting room. It had been 2 weeks since my father's funeral, and the hollow feeling in my chest hadn't subsided. Richard Turner, my father, had been a pillar of strength my entire life, successful, confident, and always in control. Even as cancer ravaged his body over the past year, he maintained that air of invincibility that had defined him. I checked my watch, 2:45 p.m. The reading of the will was scheduled for 3 hours. My stepmother, Vanessa, and her son, Ethan, hadn't arrived yet. Their absence didn't surprise me. In the 3 years since my father had married Vanessa after a whirlwind, 6-month romance, punctuality had never been their strong suit. My thoughts drifted to my mother, who had died when I was 12. For 11 years after that, it had been just Dad and me against the world. He'd built his construction company from nothing, working endless hours while still making time for my soccer games and school events. "Everything I'm building is for you, Nora," he'd tell me. "Someday, this will all be yours." The sound of voices in the hallway pulled me from my memories. Vanessa strode into the waiting room, designer handbag swinging from her arm, not a hair, out of place despite the downpour outside. Ethan slouched in behind her, eyes glued to his phone. At 27, he was 3 years younger than me, though you wouldn't know it from his perpetual adolescent demeanor. "Nora, darling," Vanessa said, air kissing near both my cheeks. "How are you holding up?" "I'm managing," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Despite my best efforts over the years, Vanessa and I had never clicked. There was always something calculated behind her warmth, like an actress hitting her mark. "It's all just so terrible," she sighed, dabbing at dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Richard was too young. 58 was indeed too young, but hearing Vanessa say my father's name still felt wrong somehow, like she was talking about someone I didn't know. "Hey!" Ethan finally looked up from his phone long enough to acknowledge my existence. Before I could respond, the receptionist called our names. "Mrs. Turner, Ms. Turner, Mr. Reynolds, Mr. Dawson will see you now." Vanessa immediately brightened at being called Mrs. Turner, a title she'd coveted and flaunted at every opportunity since the wedding. We followed the receptionist down a corridor lined with law books and framed diplomas to a conference room, where my father's longtime attorney, Howard Dawson, waited. Howard stood as we entered, his kind eyes crinkling with genuine sympathy. He'd been my father's friend for over 30 years and had always treated me like a niece. "Nora," he said, taking my hands in his. "I'm so sorry about your father. He was a good man." "Thank you, Howard." He turned to Vanessa, his demeanor cooling slightly. "Mrs. Turner, Mr. Reynolds, please have a seat." We arranged ourselves around the polished mahogany table, me on one side, Vanessa and Ethan on the other. It felt appropriate somehow, this physical division. Howard took his seat at the head of the table and opened a leather portfolio. "We're here for the reading of the last will and testament of Richard James Turner," he began formally. "This document was prepared and signed 3 months ago, with myself and my associate as witnesses." 3 months ago. My stomach tightened. That was after Dad had received his terminal diagnosis, when the cancer had spread to his liver. He'd been on heavy pain medication by then. Howard cleared his throat and began to read the standard legal preamble. I half listened, my mind wandering to memories of Dad teaching me about the business, walking construction sites with me on weekends, introducing me to contractors and clients, showing me blueprints and explaining cost projections. After college, I'd joined Turner Construction officially, working my way up from project coordinator to operations manager over the past 5 years. Now, regarding the disposition of my assets, Howard's voice pulled me back to the present. To my daughter, Nora Elizabeth Turner, I leave my collection of first edition novels, my grandfather's pocket watch, and the sum of $50,000. I blinked, certain I had misheard. 50,000? The business alone was worth millions. Not to mention the house, the vacation property in Lake Tahoe, the investment accounts. To my wife, Vanessa Marie Turner, Howard continued, his voice now carefully neutral. I leave our family home at 1428 Oak Ridge Drive, its contents, and the sum of $250,000. Vanessa smiled sadly, as if this were exactly what she'd expected. But I knew that smile. It was the same one she'd worn when showing off her engagement ring, the smile of someone who had gotten exactly what they wanted. To my stepson, Ethan Christopher Reynolds, Howard paused almost imperceptibly. I leave my controlling interest in Turner Construction Company, my investment portfolio, my vacation property at Lake Tahoe, and the remainder of my estate. The words hung in the air like smoke. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. That can't be right, I finally managed, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. There must be some mistake. Howard wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry, Nora. These are your father's wishes as legally documented. Ethan, who had looked bored throughout the proceedings, suddenly sat up straighter, a slow smile spreading across his face. Seriously? The whole company? Yes, Howard confirmed, still not looking at me. As of today, you hold a 60% stake in Turner Construction. I felt like I was drowning. But I'm the one who's been working there. I'm the one who knows the business. Ethan has never shown the slightest interest in construction. He doesn't know the first thing about it. I'm a quick study, Ethan smirked. Howard, I pleaded, turning to the attorney. This doesn't make any sense. Dad always said the company would be mine. We had plans, projections for the next 5 years. Just last month, we were discussing the West Ridge development together. The will is quite clear, Howard said, his discomfort evident. All controlling interest goes to Ethan. I need to see that document, I said, standing up and reaching across the table. Howard hesitated, then slid the will toward me. I scanned the pages frantically, looking for anything that might explain this betrayal. My father's signature was there at the bottom, alongside Howard's and his associates. But it looked wrong somehow, shakier than I remembered. This doesn't look like Dad's signature. I assure you it is, Howard said quietly. Your father signed it in my presence. When he was heavily medicated, I countered. Was he even lucid? Did you explain what he was signing? Of course I did. Howard looked offended. I would never. I think what Nora is struggling with, Vanessa interrupted smoothly, is that Richard and I had many private conversations about the future. He came to see Ethan as the son he never had, and he worried about Nora's emotional attachment to the business. He thought it would be healthier for her to pursue other opportunities. The son he never had? My father had never once indicated he wanted a son instead of me. Quite the opposite. He'd always said I was exactly the child he'd hoped for, with my mother's determination and his head for business. That's not true, I said, my voice rising. Dad was grooming me to take over. Everyone at the company knows that. People say things they don't mean all the time, Vanessa sighed, as if explaining something to a child. Richard confided in me that he was concerned about your ability to handle the pressure. The business has grown so much, and with the new developments in Portland and Seattle. Stop it, I snapped. Don't pretend you know anything about the business or what Dad wanted for it. Ethan leaned forward, his previous boredom replaced with a predatory interest. Look, Nora, I know this is a shock, but it's what Richard wanted. You still get the books and the watch, plus enough cash for a nice vacation. Maybe it's time to move on. I turned to Howard, searching for any sign of support. This isn't right, and you know it. Something happened in these last few months. Dad wouldn't do this. Howard's expression was pained. Nora, I understand this is difficult. Difficult? I laughed bitterly. My father promised me my entire life that I would, inherit the company. I've worked there for 5 years, learning every aspect of the business. And now you're telling me he left it all to someone who's never shown the slightest interest? Who doesn't know a blueprint from a balance sheet? How does that make any sense? Perhaps, Vanessa suggested with faux concern, your father recognized qualities in Ethan that would benefit the company's future. A fresh perspective. Or perhaps, I countered, staring directly at her. Something else was going on. Dad changed after he married you, Vanessa. He became secretive, distant, and once he got sick, that's enough. Vanessa's mask of sympathy slipped momentarily. I know you're upset, but don't make accusations you can't support. Your father made his choices. It's time you respected them. I gathered my things, hands shaking with a mixture of grief and rage. This isn't over. I don't know what happened or how you convinced him to do this, but I'm going to find out. Nora, Howard called as I headed for the door. Wait, there's something else. I turned, hope flaring briefly. Your father left a letter for you, he said, holding out an envelope with my name written in my father's handwriting. He asked that you read it privately. I took the envelope, resisting the urge to tear it open immediately. Whatever it contained, I didn't want Vanessa and Ethan to witness my reaction. We should discuss transition plans for the company, Ethan said, his tone suddenly businesslike. I'll need access to all accounts and files. The audacity stole my breath. You think I'm just going to hand everything over? Just like that? The will is clear, Vanessa interjected. Ethan is now the majority owner. You have a fiduciary duty. We'll see about that, I said, clutching the envelope from my father like a lifeline. Howard, I'll be in touch. As I left the conference room, the weight of what had happened threatened to crush me. Not only had I lost my father, but now his legacy, our shared dream, had been snatched away. In the elevator, I leaned against the wall, fighting back tears. I wouldn't break down. Not here, not yet. Outside, the rain had intensified, matching my darkening mood. I stood under the building's awning, staring at the envelope in my hands. What could my father possibly say that would explain this betrayal? With trembling fingers, I tore it open and unfolded the single page inside. My dearest Nora, it began in my father's familiar handwriting. If you're reading this, then something has gone terribly wrong. The rain pelted my windshield. As I sat in the parking garage, my father's letter clutched in my trembling hands. I read it again, searching for answers. My dearest Nora, if you're reading this, then something has gone terribly wrong. The will Howard read today is not what we discussed. For years, you've been my partner in building Turner Construction, and it was always my intention for you to take the reins when I was gone. I don't know what has happened, but I need you to trust your instincts. In the months since my diagnosis, things haven't felt right. Medications cloud my mind, and documents appear for my signature when I'm at my weakest. There's a safe deposit box at First National Bank, Thar 247. The key is where we always hide important things. What you need is there. Be careful who you trust. Even those closest to me may not be who they seem. I love you more than anything in this world. Dad. My tears mingled with raindrops on the paper. Dad had known something was wrong. This wasn't his doing. Someone had taken advantage of him when he was vulnerable. I started the car with newfound determination. The safe deposit box would have to wait until tomorrow, but I knew exactly where the key would be. In the hollow leg of the wooden duck decoy Dad kept in his study. It was our secret hiding place for everything from Christmas gift receipts to the spare key to our cabin. The drive to my apartment was a blur of windshield wipers and racing thoughts. I needed to think clearly to formulate a plan. If the will Howard read wasn't what my father intended, then someone had manipulated or forged it. But proving that would be difficult, especially against someone like Vanessa. I'd never trusted her from the moment Dad brought her home after meeting at a charity auction. At 45, she was 13 years his junior. Not scandalous, but enough to raise eyebrows. With her polished appearance and practiced charm, she'd swept Dad off his feet during a vulnerable time. Mom had been gone for over a decade, but Dad had never shown interest in dating until Vanessa appeared. Their whirlwind romance had culminated in marriage just 6 months later, with Ethan giving the toast at their small ceremony. I'd tried to be supportive, Dad deserved happiness, but something about Vanessa had always felt calculated. The way she'd studied our family photos too intensely, asked too many questions about Dad's business, steered conversations toward his assets. As I pulled into my apartment complex, my phone buzzed with a text from Patricia, Dad's executive assistant at Turner Construction. Heard about the will reading. Can we talk? This doesn't seem right. At least I wasn't the only one who thought. So, I texted back, my place, 7 p.m.? Patricia had been with Dad for 15 years. If anyone knew the inner workings of the company and my father's true intentions, it was her. Inside my apartment, I kicked off my rain-soaked shoes and hung my coat. The place felt empty, echoing my hollow feeling. Photos of Dad and me dotted the bookshelves, fishing at the lake, my college graduation, breaking ground on the Riverview, Office Park, our biggest project to date. I poured myself a glass of wine, needing something to steady my nerves. As I sipped, my phone rang. Vanessa. I let it go to voicemail. Whatever she had to say could wait. The voicemail notification pinged a moment later. Against my better judgment, I played it. Nora, darling. Her voice oozed false concern. I know today was difficult for you. We should meet tomorrow to discuss your role at the company moving forward. Ethan's thinking perhaps a position in human resources would suit you. Call me back when you've had time to process everything. We're still family, after all. Human resources? I'd been running operations for 2 years. The condescension made my blood boil. I deleted the message without responding. My phone buzzed again. A text from Ethan this time. Need passcodes? To financial systems, ASAP. Planning to review everything tomorrow morning. I laughed bitterly. He'd known Dad for 3 years and had never once shown interest in the business. Now he wanted the keys to the kingdom immediately. I ignored this. Message, too. A soft knock at my door announced Patricia's arrival. I opened it to find her looking as exhausted as I felt. Her usually immaculate gray bob slightly disheveled. "Oh, Nora," she said, pulling me into a tight hug. "I'm so sorry." "Come in," I said, leading her to the living room. "Wine?" "God, yes." She sank onto the couch, setting her purse beside her. "I can't believe what Howard told me about the will. Your father would never have done this." I handed her a glass and sat across from her. "I know. Dad left me a letter saying as much." I showed her the page, watching her face as she read it. "I knew something wasn't right," she said, looking up with grim determination. "The past 3 months, everything changed. Your father was making decisions that didn't make sense, signing documents without his usual scrutiny." "Vanessa?" Patricia nodded. She was always there during his treatments, hovering. Anyone who wanted to see Richard had to go through her first. "What about Howard? He's been Dad's friend for decades. How could he be part of this? I don't know. Patricia frowned, but he seemed different too, more secretive. Having private meetings with Vanessa when your father was too sick to attend. I told her about the safe deposit box. I'm going first thing tomorrow. There must be something there that can help us fight this. Patricia set down her glass. There's something else you should know. About 2 months ago, your father asked me to file articles of incorporation for a new company, Turner Legacy Holdings. He didn't tell me much, just that it was insurance for the future. I helped with the paperwork, but then he had me stop all. Work on it. Said Vanessa had convinced him it wasn't necessary. What kind of company was it? That's just it. I don't know. The documentation was incomplete, but... She hesitated. What? The night before he was hospitalized for the last time, he called me. He was more lucid than he'd been in weeks. He said, "Tell Nora to look for the legacy when the time comes." I thought he was just rambling because of the medication, but... Now! Turner Legacy Holdings, I murmured. He was planning something. One more thing, Patricia said, reaching into her purse. I made copies of some documents I found concerning. This one is from last month, a transfer of intellectual property from Turner Construction to a holding company called VE Enterprises. I took the paper, scanning it quickly. VE, Vanessa and Ethan? That would be my guess. The transfer includes proprietary building techniques your father developed, client lists, even the software your team created for project management. This is theft, I said, anger rising. They were siphoning assets before he was even gone. And this, Patricia continued, is from 6 weeks ago. Your father allegedly authorized a $5 million loan from the company to Ethan, with extremely favorable terms. I studied the document, my eyes narrowing at my father's signature. It was similar to the one on the will, shaky, uncertain. This doesn't look right. Dad's signature was always firm, even when he was tired. These look forced. I thought so too. That's why I kept copies. Patricia's expression hardened. Nora, I think they took advantage of your father's condition to loot the company before pushing you out entirely. I felt physically ill. My father, brilliant, strong, cautious Richard Turner, had been manipulated and stolen from in his final months. And now they were trying to take everything from me, too. We need to be careful, Patricia warned. Vanessa has had weeks to prepare for this. She'll have covered her tracks. Maybe, but Dad left us breadcrumbs. The safe deposit box, Turner. Legacy Holdings. I stood up, pacing the room. And we have each other. You know the company inside and out, Patricia. You can help me understand what they've been doing. Ethan called an all-staff meeting for tomorrow at 11, Patricia said. He's planning to announce the change in leadership. Then we don't have much time. I need to get to that safe deposit box first thing in the morning. I paused, a thought occurring to me. Did Vanessa ever visit the lake house? Or Ethan? Patricia thought for a moment. Vanessa went once, early in their relationship. She hated it. Complained about the remoteness, the lack of cell service. I don't think Ethan has ever been. Good. That meant they probably wouldn't know about the hidden floor safe in the master bedroom, where Dad kept his most important documents. After the bank, I'm going to the lake. There might be something there too. As Patricia left, she squeezed my hand. Your father was so proud of you, Nora. He'd want you to fight for what's yours. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, my mind racing with questions. How long had Vanessa been planning this? Was Howard complicit, or just naive? What would I find in the safe deposit box? Around 3 a.m., unable to rest, I pulled out my laptop and began researching. I looked up VE Enterprises, a Wyoming LLC formed just 4 months ago, with minimal public information available. I searched for any connections between Vanessa and Turner Construction before she met my father. Nothing obvious, but that didn't mean they didn't exist. I saved everything I found, creating a digital trail of breadcrumbs. If something happened to me, I wanted evidence of my suspicions. As dawn broke, I showered and dressed in a crisp blazer and jeans. Business casual, but formidable. I wouldn't give Vanessa and Ethan the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Before leaving, I called my college roommate, Sophie, who had become a successful forensic accountant. "I need your help," I said, after explaining the situation. "If I get you financial records, can you look for irregularities?" "Absolutely," Sophie replied without hesitation. "And Nora, I'm so sorry about your dad. He was a good man." "Yes," I said, throat tightening. "He was, and I won't let them destroy what he built." I grabbed my father's letter, my car keys, and the determination that had always made Dad say I was a Turner through and through. Whatever Vanessa and Ethan had planned, they were about to learn that they'd underestimated the wrong woman. As I drove toward Dad's house to retrieve the safe deposit key, I steeled myself for what might come next. This wasn't just about an inheritance anymore. It was about justice for my father and preserving the legacy he'd worked his whole life to build. The truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, and I wouldn't stop until I found it all. The morning air was crisp as I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home. The two-story colonial looked the same as always: meticulously maintained flower beds, freshly painted shutters, the stone path Dad and I had laid together one summer. But it wasn't my home anymore. According to the will, it belonged to Vanessa. Now. I sat in my car for a moment, steeling myself. I needed to get in and out quickly before anyone noticed. Luckily, I still had my key. Dad had insisted I keep it even after Vanessa moved in. "This will always be your home too," he'd said. The house was quiet when I entered. No sign of Vanessa or Ethan. I moved silently through the foyer, past the living room with its familiar leather furniture and family photos. I noticed with a pang that several photos of Mom had been removed, replaced with artistic black and white portraits of Vanessa. Even in death, she was being erased. I made my way to Dad's study, a room that had always been sacred to him. The door was closed but unlocked. Inside, the space smelled of Dad's pipe tobacco and old books, comforting, familiar scents that made my eyes sting with tears. The room looked largely untouched. His antique desk positioned near the window, walls lined with bookshelves, the old leather chair where he'd read to me as a child. The wooden duck decoy sat on the shelf behind his desk, exactly where it had always been. I picked it up, feeling its weight, and twisted the right leg gently. It loosened, and I shook out a small silver key into my palm, just as Dad and I had always done. I was replacing the duck when I heard a noise from elsewhere in the house, a door closing. Someone was home. I pocketed the key and moved quickly to the study door, opening it a crack to peer out. No one in the hallway yet. I slipped out and was halfway to the front door when Vanessa's voice stopped me. "Nora, is that you?" She appeared at the top of the stairs in a silk robe, her hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. She descended slowly, her expression a mixture of surprise and suspicion. "What are you doing here?" she asked, tightening the sash on her robe. I lifted my chin. I needed to pick up a few personal items, things Dad wanted me to have. "You should have called first," she said, reaching the bottom of the stairs. "This is my home now." "So I've been told." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "I hope you're being careful with what you take." "We wouldn't want any misunderstandings about what belongs to whom." "No misunderstandings here," I replied, meeting her gaze steadily. "I know exactly what my father wanted me to have." "I'm glad you're being reasonable about all this," Vanessa said, her tone softening into something that might have passed for sympathetic if I didn't know better. "Richard wanted what was best for everyone. He worried about you taking on too much responsibility." "Did he?" I struggled to keep my voice neutral. Funny, he never mentioned that to me during our daily meetings at the company. Something flickered in Vanessa's eyes. Irritation, perhaps, at my refusal to accept her narrative. People show different faces to different people, Nora. The Richard I knew in private had many concerns he didn't share with you. I'm sure he did, I said, moving toward the door. I should go. Before you do, Vanessa said, stepping closer. Have you thought any more about staying with the company? Ethan could use someone with your institutional knowledge. I'm considering my options, I replied vaguely. Don't consider too long, she advised, her smile not reaching her eyes. Ethan's already interviewing for your position. Several candidates look very promising. The threat was thinly veiled. Cooperate or be replaced entirely. I forced a neutral expression. I'll keep that in mind. As I reached for the door handle, Vanessa called after me. Oh, and Nora? If you need to come by again, please call first, for security reasons. I nodded curtly and left, my heart pounding. She was already marking her territory, establishing dominance. But I had what I came for. The key burned in my pocket like a promise. First National Bank opened at 9 a.m. I arrived at 8:55, waiting impatiently in the lobby as employees prepared. For the day, at precisely 9, I approached the teller. I need to access a safe deposit box, I said, showing my ID. Number 247, I have the key. The teller, a young woman with a nameplate reading Tiffany, checked her computer. That box is registered. To Richard Turner. Yes, he was my father. He passed away recently. Her expression softened. I'm sorry for your loss. Do you have the death certificate and proof that you're authorized to access the box? My heart sank. I hadn't brought the death certificate, and there was nothing in the will specifically authorizing me to access the safe deposit box. I don't have those with me, I admitted. But my father left me a letter specifically directing me to access this box. Tiffany looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry, but bank policy requires proper documentation for accessing a deceased person's safe deposit box. Perhaps you could speak with our manager. 5 minutes later, I sat across from Mr. Reynolds, the bank manager, explaining my situation. I showed him Dad's letter, carefully folding over the parts about the suspicious will and keeping only the reference to the safe deposit box visible. I understand your predicament, Ms. Turner, Reynolds said after examining the letter. But I'm afraid our hands are tied by regulations. You'll need the death certificate and either explicit mention in the will or a court order granting you access. How long would a court order take? I asked, trying to hide my desperation. Several days at minimum, he replied sympathetically. The probate process can be quite slow. I didn't have several days. Ethan was already making moves at the company. By the time I got a court order, crucial evidence might be destroyed. Thank you for your time, I said, rising to leave. I needed a new plan. Outside the bank, I called Patricia. No luck at the bank, I told her. They won't let me access the box without documentation I don't have yet. That's a problem, Patricia said. Ethan's already at the office going through your father's files. He brought Vanessa with him. I gripped the phone tighter. What are they looking for? I don't know, but they've been in Richard's private office for over an hour. The door's locked. Can you keep an eye on them? Let me know if they remove anything. Of course, Patricia promised. What's your next move? I glanced at my watch. The staff meeting was in 2 hours. I'm heading to the lake house. I'll be back in time for Ethan's announcement. Be careful, Patricia warned. I overheard Vanessa on the phone earlier. She mentioned something about securing all properties today. A chill ran through me. They were moving fast, trying to lock down anything that might contain evidence. Thanks for the heads up, I'll hurry. The drive to Lake Tahoe normally took just over an hour, but I made it in 50 minutes. pushing my car to its limits on the winding mountain roads. Dad's lake house, a rustic 3-bedroom cabin with a deck overlooking the water, had always been our sanctuary. We'd spent every summer here when I was growing up, and in recent years, it had become Dad's weekend retreat from the pressures of running the company. The gravel driveway crunched under my tires as I pulled up. The cabin looked peaceful, undisturbed. I used my key to enter, breathing in the familiar scent of pine and wood smoke. This place held so many memories: fishing trips, board games on rainy days, long talks on the deck as we watched the sunset. I moved purposefully to the master bedroom. The floor safe was hidden beneath an area rug under the bed, a feature Dad had added years ago to store valuables when we were away. I pushed the queen-sized bed aside and rolled back the rug, revealing the small metal safe embedded in the floor. The combination was one Dad had made me memorize: Mom's birthday, followed by the year Turner Construction was founded. The safe opened with a satisfying click, revealing several folders, a small fireproof box, and an external hard drive. I examined the folders first. One contained property deeds, not just for the lake house, but for 3 other properties I didn't recognize. Another held insurance policies, including a substantial life insurance policy Dad had taken out just 1 year ago, with me listed as the sole beneficiary. That, at least, Vanessa hadn't managed to change. The third folder made me gasp. Inside were copies of 2 different wills, one dated a year ago, leaving the business and most assets to me as Dad had always promised, and another dated 3 months ago that matched what Howard had read yesterday. But there was something else, a handwritten note from Dad. If you're reading this, the wrong will was executed. The most recent document was signed under duress. See video on hard drive. Password: Turner Legacy Lives. My hands trembled as I connected the external drive to my laptop. I entered the password, and a folder opened containing several video files. I clicked on the most recent one, dated just 6 weeks ago. Dad's face filled the screen, gaunt from illness, but with clear, determined eyes. He was seated in his study, the camera angle suggesting he'd set up the recording himself. "Nora," he began, his voice weaker than I remembered, but still steady. "If you're watching this, then my suspicions were correct. Vanessa and Ethan are not who they pretend to be. I've discovered that Ethan is actually Vincent Reynolds, a former employee of Westco Development, our biggest competitor. He was fired for embezzlement 3 years ago, right before Vanessa introduced him as her son." I gasped. Ethan wasn't even Vanessa's son? "I believe they targeted our company deliberately," Dad continued. "I've found evidence that Vanessa has been feeding information to Westco, helping them undercut our bids. The new will they forced me to sign, it was after a heavy round of medication. I barely remember signing it, but Howard was there, acting strangely insistent." Dad coughed violently, and it took him a moment to recover. "I've been moving assets to protect them. Turner Legacy Holdings now controls the patents and intellectual property I developed. You're the sole owner. But the paperwork is hidden. Patricia has the incorporation documents, and the operating agreement is with my old friend Judge Bernard Mills. He's holding it in trust." The recording continued for another 5 minutes, Dad explaining the steps he'd taken to protect his legacy and the evidence he'd gathered against Vanessa and Ethan, or Vincent, as he was actually named. He detailed offshore accounts they'd set up, conversations he'd overheard, and his growing certainty that his illness was progressing unnaturally quickly. "I've sent samples of my medication to be tested," Dad said gravely. "The results should go to Dr. Patel, if what I suspect is true." He left the thought unfinished, but the implication was clear. My blood ran cold. Was he suggesting Vanessa was poisoning him? "Trust Patricia, Judge Mills, and Dr. Patel," Dad concluded. "No one else, not even Howard. I'm not sure where his loyalties lie anymore. I love you, Nora. You've always made me proud, I know you'll set things right." The video ended, and I sat frozen, trying to process what I'd learned. This wasn't just about an inheritance or a company. This was potential murder, corporate espionage, and fraud. And I had the proof right here in my hands. I quickly copied all the files to my laptop and a cloud storage account. Then I photographed the documents with my phone for backup. I couldn't risk losing this evidence. The small fireproof box contained more treasures: banking information for Turner Legacy Holdings, access codes to Dad's private email server, and a USB drive labeled insurance policy. I pocketed it all. As I was replacing the rug and moving the bed back into position, my phone rang. "Patricia." "Nora, where are you? The meeting starts in 20 minutes and things are getting strange." "I'm on my way back," I said, securing the safe and gathering my things. "What's happening?" "Ethan, or whoever he is, just had security escort 2 of your project managers out of the building. He's brought in his own people, and Vanessa is in Richard's office, shredding documents." "Stall them," I urged. "I'll be there as soon as I can." "And Patricia?" "Dad left videos explaining everything. Ethan isn't who he claims to be. He's Vincent Reynolds, formerly of Westco. They were working together to take over the company." Patricia's sharp intake of breath was audible. Good God. I knew something was wrong, but this... There's more. But it'll have to wait. Just be careful around them, okay? I will. Drive safely. I disconnected the call and took one last look around the cabin, wondering if this would be the last time I saw it as ours. Then I locked up and hurried to my car, the weight of what I'd discovered heavy on my shoulders. The drive back to the city was tense, my mind racing with plans and contingencies. I needed to contact Judge Mills, find Dr. Patel, and figure out how to confront Vanessa and Ethan with what I knew without putting myself or Patricia at risk. I was about 10 minutes from the Turner construction offices when my phone rang again. "Unknown number," I answered cautiously. "Nora Turner?" a deep male voice asked. "Yes. Who's this?" "My name is Detective Michael Rivera, Sacramento Police Department. I understand you're the daughter of Richard Turner?" My stomach tightened. "Yes, that's right. Ms. Turner, I'm calling because we've received some concerning information regarding your father's death. Would it be possible for you to come to the station today?" "What kind of information?" I asked, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. "I'd prefer to discuss it in person," he replied. "But it relates to allegations that your father's death may not have been due to natural causes. Someone had reported my suspicions, but who? I'd only just discovered this myself." "I can come this afternoon," I said. "But right now I'm heading to my family's company for an important meeting." "I understand. 2 o'clock work for you?" "Yes, I'll be there." As I pulled into the parking lot of Turner Construction, I noticed several unfamiliar cars, including a sleek black Maserati that could only belong to Ethan, or Vincent as I now knew him. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture they formed was darker than I'd imagined. I checked my appearance in the rearview mirror, smoothing my hair and straightening my blazer. I couldn't show fear or uncertainty, not now. With the hard drive and documents secure in my bag, I headed for the building's entrance, ready to face whatever came next. The lobby was busier than usual, with clusters of employees whispering anxiously. They fell silent as I walked in, their expressions a mixture of sympathy and curiosity. News of the will's contents had clearly spread. Patricia met me at the elevator, her face tight with worry. "Thank goodness you're here. They've been asking where you are." "Let them ask," I said, stepping into the elevator. "I have what I need now." "What did you find?" she whispered as the doors closed. "Everything," I replied simply. Dad was 10 steps ahead of them the whole time. The elevator opened directly onto the executive floor, where our largest conference room was located. Through the glass walls, I could see the room was already full. Every employee from both offices packed in, with Vanessa and Ethan standing at the front like conquering generals. Ethan was mid-sentence when I walked in, his confident smirk faltering, slightly at my appearance. Vanessa's eyes narrowed, her smile becoming fixed. "Ah, Nora." Ethan recovered smoothly. "We were just discussing the transition. Please, join us." I walked deliberately to the front of the room, standing not beside them but opposite, creating a clear visual division. "Thank you all for coming," I said, addressing the room full of familiar faces, people who had worked with my father for years, who had watched me grow up in this company. Before Ethan continues, there are some important facts you should all be aware of. Vanessa stepped forward, her smile brittle. "Nora, dear, this isn't the time for—" "It's exactly the time," I countered, my voice steady. "Because Turner, construction is still my company, despite what you may have been told." A murmur ran through the crowd. Ethan laughed, though there was a nervous edge to it. "I think the will was quite clear about who owns the controlling interest now." "The will that was read yesterday was signed under duress," I stated clearly. "My father left evidence proving that fact, along with documentation of the fraud perpetrated against him and this company." Vanessa's face hardened. "These are serious accusations, Nora. Grief can make people imagine things that aren't there." "I'm not imagining the video testimony my father recorded," I replied, meeting her gaze directly. "Or the fact that your son Ethan is actually Vincent Reynolds, formerly employed by our competitor Westco Development. Information I'll be sharing with the police this afternoon." The room erupted in shocked whispers. Ethan's, or Vincent's, face drained of color, while Vanessa's filled with fury. "Or," I continued, raising my voice slightly, "the documentation showing how you've been systematically draining company assets and transferring proprietary information to our competitors." Vincent took a step toward me, his mask of charm completely gone. "You're making a grave mistake," he hissed. "No," I replied calmly. "You made the mistake. You underestimated my father, and you underestimated me." I turned back to the assembled employees. "Turner Construction remains in the family, as my father always intended. Anyone with questions or concerns can speak with me or Patricia directly. That's all for now." The room was silent for a long moment, then broke into a buzz of conversation. Vanessa grabbed Vincent's arm, whispering furiously in his ear. I watched them, no longer afraid but determined to see justice done, for Dad, for myself, and for everyone else they had deceived. Patricia appeared at my side. "Dr. Patel just called the office. She wants to meet with you immediately. Says it's about your father's test results." I nodded, the final pieces of the puzzle within reach. "Tell her I'll be there right after I meet with Detective Rivera." As I gathered my things to leave, Vincent approached, his voice low and threatening. "This isn't over, Nora. You have no idea what you're dealing with." I looked him straight in the eye, thinking of all my father had taught me about standing my ground. "No, Vincent. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I am my father's daughter, and I will see this through to the end." With that, I walked out, leaving them to face the whispers and stares of the entire company. The truth was finally coming to light, and with it, the path to reclaiming my inheritance and honoring my father's legacy. The hallway outside Dr. Patel's office was quiet, the muffled sounds of the hospital barely reaching this administrative wing. I sat with my hands clasped tightly in my lap, Patricia beside me, both of us waiting in tense silence. My meeting with Detective Rivera had been brief but productive. I'd shared copies of Dad's videos and documents, and he'd promised to investigate thoroughly. "Ms. Turner?" Dr. Patel's assistant appeared at the door. "The doctor will see you. Now." Dr. Amara Patel had been Dad's oncologist throughout his battle with cancer. A petite woman with intelligent eyes and a gentle manner, she'd always been straightforward with us about his prognosis. Today, however, her usual calm professionalism was tinged with something else: anger. Nora, she said, rising from behind her desk as we entered. Thank you for coming so quickly. You said you had my father's test results? I prompted, unable to wait for pleasantries. Dr. Patel nodded, gesturing for us to sit. Yes. About 6 weeks ago, your father came to me with an unusual request. He asked me to test samples of his medication, expressed concern that his symptoms were progressing too rapidly. She paused, her expression grave. I thought at first it was denial. Many patients look for explanations beyond their illness when facing terminal diagnoses. But you did the tests anyway, I said. Yes. Richard was not a man given to paranoia or unfounded suspicions. I respected him enough to take his concerns seriously. She opened a file on her desk. I sent samples to an independent laboratory. The results came back 3 days ago, but I couldn't reach you. Vanessa has been screening his calls and visitors, Patricia explained. Dr. Patel's lips tightened. That explains it. Well, the results are concerning to say the least. Your father's pain medication contained significant traces of arsenic, not enough to kill him outright, but sufficient to accelerate his decline and exacerbate his symptoms. The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd suspected something sinister from Dad's video, but hearing it confirmed made it horrifyingly real. They were poisoning him. It appears so, Dr. Patel confirmed. I've already reported this to the authorities, which may explain why you were contacted by the police. How long? My voice cracked. How long would he have had without this? Dr. Patel's eyes softened with compassion. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer is aggressive, Nora. But with proper treatment, your father might have had 6 to 9 more months, not the 6 weeks he declined in. She hesitated. More importantly, he would have remained lucid and comfortable for much longer. The arsenic caused increased confusion, weakness, and pain. Tears burned behind my eyes at the thought of Dad suffering needlessly, his final months stolen from him. They couldn't wait, I whispered. They needed him gone quickly, before he could change things or tell anyone what he suspected. I should have recognized the symptoms earlier, Dr. Patel said, regret heavy in her voice. The rapid cognitive decline, the heightened neuropathy, they're consistent with arsenic poisoning, but I attributed them to the cancer's progression. This wasn't your fault, I assured her. You did exactly what Dad asked. You found the truth. What happens now? Patricia asked. I've provided all my findings to the police, Dr. Patel replied. They'll need to investigate who had access to his medication. Vanessa, I said without hesitation. She insisted on managing all his medications herself, said she wanted to take that burden off me so I could focus on the company. Dr. Patel nodded grimly. That's what I suspected. The police will need that information. As we left the hospital, the full weight of what I'd learned pressed down on me. This wasn't just fraud or manipulation anymore. It was murder. Vanessa and Vincent had systematically poisoned my father to gain control of his company and assets. Are you okay? Patricia asked as we reached the parking lot. No, I admitted, but I will be once they're held accountable. I checked my watch. We need to meet with Judge Mills. Dad said he has the operating agreement for Turner Legacy Holdings. Judge Bernard Mills had been my father's friend since law school. His downtown office was modest despite his prominence on the bench, the walls lined with family photos and legal texts. At 72, he still had the sharp mind and commanding presence that had made him a respected figure in the legal community. Nora, he greeted me warmly, embracing me with a strength that belied his age. I've been waiting for you to contact me. You knew Dad left something for me? Indeed. He gestured for us to sit. Richard came to me about 3 months ago, very concerned about his wife's behavior and the security of his business legacy. He asked me to hold certain documents in trust until after his death. Judge Mills went to his safe and removed a sealed envelope. He was quite specific about who could access these. Only you, and only after his passing. I took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a thick document titled Operating Agreement, Turner Legacy Holdings, LLC, and a letter on my father's personal stationery. My darling Nora, the letter began. If Judge Mills has given you this, then my fears were justified. The company I've created for you, Turner Legacy Holdings, now controls all intellectual property, patents, and client relationships developed by Turner Construction. The shell may be compromised, but the heart remains yours. The operating agreement confirmed what Dad's letter promised. I was the sole owner and managing member of Turner Legacy Holdings. The company held exclusive rights to use all construction, methods, software, and business processes developed by Dad over the years. Turner Construction might own buildings and equipment, but without these rights, it was essentially worthless. Did Dad explain why he set this up? I asked Judge Mills. He suspected corporate espionage, the judge replied. Said he believed his new wife and her son were working with competitors, attempting to gain control of his proprietary methods and client relationships. He was right, I said grimly. They manipulated him, forced him to sign a fraudulent will, and... I hesitated, still struggling with the horror of it. Dr. Patel confirmed they were poisoning him to accelerate his decline. Judge Mills's expression darkened. My God. I knew Richard was concerned, but I had no idea the situation was so dire. He leaned forward. What do you need from me, Nora? Your testimony when the time comes, I replied. And your advice now. I have evidence of fraud, corporate espionage, and potentially murder. But Vanessa and Vincent still control Turner Construction on paper. How do I protect myself and the company while the investigation unfolds? The judge considered this. First, we file an emergency injunction preventing them from making any major decisions or financial transactions on behalf of Turner Construction. The evidence you've gathered should be sufficient grounds. Second, we push for temporary control to be granted to you while the criminal investigation proceeds. And Turner Legacy Holdings? That's your ace in the hole, Judge Mills said, with a hint of admiration. Your father created a legally binding arrangement that effectively makes Turner Construction dependent on your new company. They can't operate without licensing the intellectual property you now control. As I left Judge Mills's office, I felt a strange mix of grief and validation. Dad had known what was happening and had fought back in his own clever way, creating a safety net to protect everything he'd built. Now it was my turn to finish what he'd started. My next stop was Howard Dawson's law office. This time, I didn't wait in the reception area. I strode past his startled secretary and pushed open his office door without knocking. Howard looked up from his desk, surprise quickly giving way to wariness. Nora, I wasn't expecting you. Clearly. I closed the door behind me and stood facing him. We need to talk about the fraudulent will you helped execute. Howard's face paled slightly, but he maintained his composure. The will I read was legally sound, witnessed and signed according to all requirements. I placed my laptop on his desk and turned it to face him. Let's watch something together, shall we? I played the video of my father explaining how the will had been signed under duress, how he'd been heavily medicated and barely remembered the signing. Throughout the playback, Howard's expression shifted from defensive to resigned. When the video ended, I closed the laptop. You were his friend for 30 years, Howard. How could you do this? Howard removed his glasses, suddenly looking much older. You don't understand the position I was in. Then explain it to me. He sighed heavily. About 4 months ago, Vanessa came to me with information, evidence of improprieties in some of my cases, instances where I'd cut corners or overlooked discrepancies to help clients. Nothing criminal, but enough to ruin my reputation and possibly lead to disbarment if it came to light. She blackmailed you, Howard nodded miserably. She wanted me to prepare a new will and ensure Richard signed it. I told myself it wasn't that different from his previous intentions, just shifting some assets around. But deep down, I knew it wasn't what Richard truly wanted. So you chose to betray your oldest friend to save your own skin. I'm not proud of it, Howard said quietly. I've barely slept since the signing. Richard wasn't himself that day, confused, barely able to hold the pen. I should have stopped it. Yes, you should have, I agreed coldly. And now, you have a choice to make. You can continue this charade and face charges as an accessory to fraud and possibly murder, or you can make a statement to the police about what really happened. Howard's head snapped up. Murder? What are you talking about? I told him about Dr. Patel's findings, watching shock and horror spread across his face. My God, he whispered. I never thought. I knew they were manipulating him, but this. So what's it going to be, Howard? Are you going to do the right thing, or am I going to have to add you to the list of people who betrayed my father? He was quiet for a long moment, then reached for his phone. I'll call Detective Rivera now. I'll tell him everything. And the will? I'll file a petition to have it invalidated immediately, citing duress and lack of testamentary capacity. Howard met my eyes, genuine remorse evident in his expression. I'm sorry, Nora. Your father deserved better from me. Yes, he did, I replied, gathering my things. But it's not too late to help bring justice for him. As I left Howard's office, my phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Emergency at the office. Vincent and Vanessa are clearing out files and computers. Security called the police, but they're claiming it's their property. I texted back quickly. On my way. Don't let them leave with anything. The final confrontation was coming sooner than I'd expected, but this time I was ready for them. Pulling out of the parking garage, I called Detective Rivera. Detective, Vanessa and Vincent Reynolds are at Turner Construction right now, removing files and equipment. Given the evidence we've discussed, I believe they're destroying evidence of their crimes. I'm sending officers immediately, he replied. Don't confront them yourself, Ms. Turner. These people appear to be dangerous. I'll wait for your officers, I promised, even as I accelerated toward the office. The truth had finally emerged from the shadows, revealing the full extent of Vanessa and Vincent's deception. My father's legacy wouldn't be stolen by those who had betrayed and harmed him. I would make sure of that no matter what came next. By the time I pulled into the Turner Construction parking lot, 3 police cruisers were already there, their lights flashing against the glass facade of the building. A small crowd of employees had gathered outside, watching the scene unfold, with expressions ranging from confusion to concern. I spotted Patricia near the entrance, deep in conversation with a uniformed officer. She waved me over as soon as she saw me. They're still inside, she said in a low voice. Security blocked the loading dock exit when they tried to leave with boxes of files and several computers. Did they say what they were taking? Vincent claimed they were personal items of Richard's that Vanessa wanted to keep for sentimental reasons. Patricia's tone made it clear how little she believed that excuse. The officer beside her, a middle-aged man with a nameplate reading Rodriguez, turned to me. You're Ms. Turner? Yes. I've been speaking with Detective Rivera about the situation. He's inside now, Officer Rodriguez informed me. He asked that you wait here until they secure the scene. I nodded, though every instinct urged me to rush in and confront Vanessa and Vincent myself. As we waited, more employees approached, forming a protective circle around Patricia and me. Is it true? Asked Neil, our veteran project manager who'd been with Dad since the beginning. Were they really trying to steal the company out from under you? Yes, I said simply. But my father was smarter than they anticipated. He left evidence of what they were doing. We never trusted them, Neil said, several others nodding in agreement. the way they swooped in after your mother passed, how they tried to isolate your father from everyone who cared about him. Your dad built this company from nothing, added Sophia, our head of design. We all know he wanted you to lead it, Nora. Whatever you need from us, we're with you. Their support moved me deeply. These people weren't just employees. They were extended family who had watched me grow up and learn the business. They had been loyal to my father, and now they were rallying around me. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. That means more than you know. The front doors opened, and Detective Rivera emerged with 2 officers escorting Vanessa and Vincent in handcuffs. Vanessa's perfect composure had cracked, her hair disheveled, her expression a mixture of fury and desperation. Vincent looked pale, his earlier arrogance replaced by visible fear. You've made a terrible mistake, Vanessa was saying to Detective Rivera. We have every right to access company property. The evidence suggests otherwise, Mrs. Turner, Rivera replied calmly. You're being detained pending an investigation into corporate theft, fraud, and potential homicide charges. Vanessa's eyes found me in the crowd, narrowing with hatred. This is your doing, she hissed as they passed. You'll regret this, Nora. We still legally control the company. Not for much longer, I replied steadily. After they were placed in separate police cars, Detective Rivera approached me. We caught them attempting to delete server files and shred documents. My team is securing everything as evidence. Thank you, Detective. Howard Dawson called me, he added in a lower voice. His statement corroborates your claims about the will being signed under duress. Between that and what we found here today, we have grounds to freeze all assets associated with Turner Construction pending the outcome of our investigation. What does that mean for day-to-day operations? I asked, concerned for the hundreds of employees who depended on the company for their livelihoods. Typically, the court would appoint a temporary manager, Rivera explained. Given your position and the evidence suggesting you were the intended heir, you could petition for that role. I nodded, already formulating a plan. I'll speak with Judge Mills about filing the necessary motions. As the police left with Vanessa and Vincent, I turned to the assembled employees. I know you all have questions, and I promise to answer them as honestly as I can. For now, please return to your work. Turner Construction will continue operating. With Patricia at my side, I entered the building and headed to Dad's office, the heart of the company he'd built. The space felt different now, knowing what had transpired here in his final months. How lonely and afraid he must have felt, realizing the people closest to him were betraying him while his strength ebbed away. What now? Patricia asked as I sat behind Dad's desk, running my fingers along the worn edge where he'd rested his hands for decades. We rebuild, I said simply, starting with the people we know we can trust. I spent the next hour making calls to Judge Mills, to Howard, to our company's legal team. By the end of the day, we had filed emergency petitions to invalidate the fraudulent will and establish temporary control of Turner Construction under my management. Meanwhile, Patricia assembled a team of trusted employees to assess what damage Vanessa and Vincent had done. Initial reports were concerning. Financial records altered, proprietary information compromised, client relationships strained by Vincent's abrasive approach during his brief tenure at the helm. They were systematically gutting the company, Sophia reported after reviewing the design database. Someone downloaded our entire archive of proprietary building techniques and transferred them to an external drive 2 days ago. Can we trace where they went? I asked. IT is working on it, but they're pretty sure it was sent to Wesco Development, our biggest competitor. The pieces clicked into place. Dad's suspicions had been correct. Vincent and Vanessa had been working for Wesco all along, infiltrating Turner Construction to steal the innovative construction methods that had given us our competitive edge. By late afternoon, exhaustion was catching up with me. I'd been running on adrenaline since the will reading the day before, and the emotional toll of everything I'd discovered was beginning to weigh heavily. "You should go home and rest," Patricia advised, bringing me a cup of coffee. "We can handle things here for now." "I can't," I said, rubbing my temples. "There's still too much to do. Dad fought to protect this company even when he was dying. I can't let him down now." "You're not letting him down," she assured me gently. "But you won't be any good to anyone. If you collapse from exhaustion, Richard would want you to take care of yourself." She was right, of course. Dad had always emphasized the importance of self-care, even during the most demanding projects. "Work hard, rest well," he'd say. "You can't build on a weak foundation." "All right," I conceded, "but I'll be back first thing tomorrow." "Of course you will," Patricia smiled. "You're Richard's daughter through and through." As I gathered my things to leave, my phone rang. Sophie, my college roommate and forensic accountant. "Nora," she said without preamble when I answered. "I've been reviewing those financial records you sent. There's something you need to see right away." "Can it wait until tomorrow? I'm completely drained." "It's about Vanessa's past," Sophie replied. "Before she met your father. I think you're going to want to see this immediately." My exhaustion receded slightly. "I'll come to your office now." Sophie's downtown office was a stark contrast to the warm wood and glass of Turner Construction, all sleek metal and minimalist decor, reflecting her precise analytical nature. She greeted me with a quick hug before leading me to her workspace, where multiple monitors displayed financial records and news articles. "I ran background checks on both Vanessa and her so-called son," Sophie explained, sitting down and gesturing for me to join her. "Vincent Reynolds does exist, but he's not who they claimed. He was born Vincent Ellis, changed his name to Reynolds 5 years ago after his first fraud conviction." "First conviction?" I echoed. "He's been involved in at least 3 corporate espionage cases that I can trace," Sophie continued, pulling up court records. "Always the same pattern: charm his way into a company, gain access to proprietary information, then deliver it to competitors for a substantial fee." "And Vanessa?" Sophie's expression grew more serious. "That's where it gets really interesting. Vanessa Marie Turner, previously Vanessa Ellis, before that Vanessa Cortez, and before that—" She clicked to another screen, showing a 20-year-old newspaper article with a grainy photo of a younger Vanessa, Veronica Mercer, wanted for questioning in the death of her second husband, Harold Mercer, who died of apparent arsenic poisoning. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. She's done this before. At least twice that I can find records of, Sophie confirmed grimly. Harold Mercer in Florida, 2003, and Thomas Ellis, Vincent's father and her third husband, in Arizona, 2010. Both wealthy men who died after short illnesses, leaving everything to her. But she was never charged. No, in both cases the deaths were attributed to natural causes initially. By the time suspicions arose, Vanessa had vanished with the money. New identity, new state, new target. Sophie leaned back, her expression troubled. "Nora, your father wasn't just the victim of opportunistic fraud. He was targeted by a practiced Black Widow and her accomplice." I struggled to process this new information. "We need to get this to Detective Rivera immediately." "Already sent," Sophie assured me. "But there's more. I traced financial transfers, from accounts associated with Vanessa to offshore holdings connected to the CEO of Westco Development, dating back to before she even met your father. But she was working for them from the beginning, I realized. This wasn't opportunistic. It was a planned corporate takeover using my father as the entry point. Exactly. And based on the timing of these transfers, Westco has already received whatever information Vincent stole. I felt a surge of panic. If Westco has Dad's proprietary methods and client relationships, they could potentially destroy Turner Construction's competitive advantage overnight, Sophie finished for me. Unless? Unless what? A small, satisfied smile crossed Sophie's face. Unless those methods and relationships are actually owned by a different entity, like Turner Legacy Holdings. In which case, Wesco has just committed corporate theft on a massive scale, and we have the paper trail to prove it. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a surge of hope. Dad's foresight in creating Turner Legacy Holdings hadn't just protected his intellectual property from Vanessa and Vincent. It had created a legal trap for anyone who tried to use the stolen information. "We need to move quickly," I said, already reaching for my phone. "I need to speak with our legal team about filing immediate injunctions against Wesco." Sophie nodded. "I'll prepare all the financial evidence. And Nora, I'm so sorry about your father. He was a good man who didn't deserve any of this." "No, he didn't," I agreed softly. "But he was also smarter than they gave him credit for. Even in his final days, he was laying the groundwork to protect everything he'd built." As I left Sophie's office, emotionally and physically exhausted but with renewed purpose, I thought about all the support that had rallied around me. Patricia's unwavering loyalty, Judge Mills's guidance, the employees' trust, Howard's redemptive honesty, Sophie's investigative skills, and Detective Rivera's commitment to justice. Dad had taught me that true strength came not just from within, but from the community you built around you. "No one succeeds alone," he'd always said. Now that lesson was proving truer than ever. With this network of support, I could finish what Dad had started, bringing Vanessa and Vincent to justice, protecting Turner Construction, and reclaiming the legacy that had been nearly stolen from us both. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for the first time since the will reading, I felt confident that we would prevail. Dad had given me the tools and knowledge I needed. Now it was up to me to use them. Morning light filtered through the blinds of my father's office. My office now, at least temporarily. I'd arrived at dawn after a fitful night's sleep, determined to reclaim what had been stolen and protect what remained. The legal team had worked through the night, preparing injunctions against Wesco and petitioning the court to invalidate the fraudulent will. The door opened, and Patricia entered with 2 cups of coffee. "You're here early," she observed, setting 1 cup on my desk. "Couldn't sleep," I admitted, taking a grateful sip. Too many thoughts racing through my head. "Understandable. The emergency hearing is at 10 this morning, right?" I nodded. Judge Mills had expedited our request, recognizing the urgency of establishing clear control of the company while the criminal investigation proceeded. "What do you think our chances are?" Patricia asked, settling into the chair across from E. "Howard's testimony about the will being signed under duress is compelling," I replied. "Combined with Dad's video statement and Dr. Patel's evidence about his compromised mental state, we have a strong case for invalidating the current will." "And Turner Construction?" "That's more complicated," I admitted. "Even with the will invalidated, there's the matter of probate and proper succession. It could take weeks or months to fully resolve." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "Meanwhile, our projects need oversight, employees need leadership, and clients need reassurance." "The staff meeting is scheduled for 9, Patricia reminded me. "Everyone will be looking to you for direction." "I know," I said quietly. Dad always made leadership look so effortless. Even in the worst crises, he never showed doubt. Patricia smiled warmly. "He had 20 years more experience than you, Nora, and even he had moments of uncertainty. He just never showed them publicly." She leaned forward. "But he believed in you completely. I remember him telling me once, 'Nora has better instincts at 30 than I had at 40. The vote of confidence from beyond the grave strengthened my resolve. "We need a 2-pronged approach," I said, standing up and moving to the whiteboard that dominated one wall. "Legal and operational." I began outlining our strategy, the plan coming together as I wrote. Legally, we need to invalidate the fraudulent will, establish interim control of Turner Construction, secure all intellectual property through Turner Legacy Holdings, and coordinate with authorities on the criminal charges against Vanessa and Vincent. And Wesco, Patricia added. They're clearly complicit in corporate espionage. Exactly. I added that to the board. Operationally, we need to stabilize ongoing projects, reassure clients and partners, secure our remaining intellectual property, and assess what damage has already been done. By the time I finished outlining our approach, the whiteboard was covered with action items, timelines, and responsible parties. It's ambitious, Patricia noted, but comprehensive. A knock at the door interrupted us. It was Neil, our project manager, looking concerned. Sorry to bother you, Nora, but we've got a situation with the Riverside development. The bank is threatening to pull funding due to leadership instability. This was exactly what I'd feared, the chaos caused by Vanessa and Vincent was already threatening our projects. Set up a video call with their loan officer for after the staff meeting, I instructed. I'll handle it personally. As Neil left, my phone rang. Sophie. Turn on the news, she said without preamble. Channel 7. I grabbed the remote for the small TV mounted in the corner of the office, flipping to the local news channel. A reporter stood outside the county jail, Vanessa visible in the background being released. Bail was set at $500,000, which Mrs. Turner posted this morning, the reporter was saying. Her attorney maintains that these charges are the result of a family dispute over inheritance and that his client is innocent of any wrongdoing. She's out already? I said in disbelief. What about Vincent? Still in custody, Sophie replied. Apparently, his bail was set much higher due to his prior record. I watched as Vanessa emerged fully from the building, composed once more in an elegant pantsuit, her attorney at her side making a statement to the press. My client is the grieving widow of a respected businessman, the attorney was saying. These absurd allegations are nothing more than an attempt by his daughter to circumvent her father's clearly stated wishes regarding his estate. We are confident that justice will prevail. Unbelievable, I muttered. She's trying to spin this as a family squabble. It gets worse, Sophie said. Wesco just issued a press release announcing their new revolutionary construction methodology. That bears a striking resemblance to your father's proprietary techniques. Anger flared within me. They're not wasting any time, are they? Send me everything you have on the financial connections between Wesco and Vanessa. Our legal team is heading to court in 2 hours. After ending the call, I took a moment to center myself. Dad had always emphasized the importance of clear thinking in a crisis. Emotion clouds judgment, he'd say. Feel it, acknowledge it, then set it aside to do what needs to be done. The staff meeting at 9 was standing room only, with employees from every department crowded into our largest conference room, anxiety evident on most faces. As I stood at the front, I channeled my father's calm authority. I know many of you have questions and concerns about what's happening, I began. So let me be direct. Turner Construction is facing unprecedented challenges. Vanessa and Vincent Reynolds attempted to illegally seize control of this company through fraud and deception. They also stole proprietary information, which has now been passed to our competitors. Murmurs spread through the room, but I held up a hand. That's the bad news. The good news is that my father anticipated this possibility and took steps to protect the company's most valuable assets. While Turner Construction's physical resources may have been temporarily compromised, the intellectual property, our designs, methods, and client relationships are legally secured through a separate entity that remains under legitimate control. Relief visibly swept through the crowd. I continued, outlining our two-pronged strategy and assigning key responsibilities. Some of our clients and partners may be concerned about stability during this transition. Your job is to reassure them. that Turner Construction remains strong and that projects will continue as planned. What about the legal situation? Someone called out. The news said Vanessa is claiming the will is valid. We have compelling evidence that my father's will was signed under duress while he was heavily medicated, I replied. Our legal team is presenting that evidence in court this morning. In the meantime, we've secured an emergency order preventing any major financial or operational decisions without court approval. By the end of the meeting, the mood had shifted from anxiety to cautious optimism. We had a plan, clear leadership, and a common purpose. As people filed out to begin implementing their assignments, Neil approached with Sophia from the design department. We've been thinking, Neil said, about the Riverside development and some of our other major projects. Most of them are using designs and methods that are now covered by Turner Legacy Holdings, right? That's correct, I confirmed. So technically, Sophia continued, Turner Construction would need proper licensing from Turner Legacy Holdings to continue using those methods, licenses that Vanessa and Vincent never secured. I saw where they were going with this, which means those projects are currently proceeding without proper intellectual property licensing. Neil nodded. Exactly. If the bank is concerned about leadership stability, perhaps they should be more concerned about potential IP infringement if the projects continue under the wrong leadership. A slow smile spread across my face. That's brilliant. We can use Turner Legacy Holdings as leverage to ensure proper control of the ongoing projects. I squeezed both their shoulders. This is exactly the kind of thinking we need right now. After they left, I called our legal team to integrate this approach into our court strategy. By positioning Turner Legacy Holdings as the essential intellectual property holder, we could create a situation where only my leadership would allow projects to proceed legally. The video call with the Riverside Developments Bank went better than expected once I explained the legal protection Dad had put in place through Turner Legacy Holdings. The loan officer, initially skeptical, became decidedly more cooperative when I outlined the potential liability of continuing the project without proper licensing of our proprietary methods. So to be clear, he said, even if Vanessa Turner temporarily retains control of Turner Construction, the company couldn't legally complete the Riverside project without your approval as the owner of Turner Legacy Holdings. That's correct, I confirmed. And I'm only willing to grant that license to Turner Construction under proper leadership, which the court will determine today. By the time I headed to the courthouse for the emergency hearing, a clear strategy had crystallized. Turner Legacy Holdings wasn't just a protection mechanism, it was a powerful tool to regain control of the company and preserve Dad's legacy. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, alerted by Vanessa's attorney's earlier press conference. I spotted her across the plaza, still playing the role of grieving widow for the cameras. Our eyes met briefly, hers narrowing in cold calculation before she turned away to continue her performance. Remember, Judge Mills advised quietly as we walked inside, she's desperate now. The evidence against her is mounting, and she knows it. That makes her dangerous. I understand, I replied, thinking of Dad's warning in his letter. Be careful, who you trust. But we have the truth on our side. The hearing was assigned to Judge Elena Vasquez, a stern woman with a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency. The courtroom was already filling with spectators as we took our seats at the plaintiff's table. Howard Dawson sat nearby, looking pale but resolved, his signed affidavit about the circumstances of the will signing ready to be presented. Vanessa and her attorney entered moments later, taking their position at the defense table. She nodded cordially to the judge as if this were a minor business matter, rather than accusations of fraud and worse. This court will now hear the emergency petition regarding the estate of Richard Turner, Judge Vasquez announced. Given the serious nature of the allegations, I've reviewed the preliminary filings and evidence submitted by both parties. Let's proceed directly to arguments. Our attorney, Michelle Lang, rose first. Your Honor, We're seeking immediate invalidation of the will dated 3 months ago on grounds of duress and lack of testamentary capacity, as well as temporary administrative control of Turner Construction pending full probate proceedings. And the basis for these extraordinary requests? Judge Vasquez asked. We have substantial evidence that Richard Turner was not of sound mind when the will was executed, due to both his illness and deliberate medication manipulation, Michelle explained. We have testimony from his physician regarding his compromised mental state, a video statement from Mr. Turner himself alleging the will was signed under duress, and a sworn affidavit from the attorney who witnessed the signing, Howard Dawson, acknowledging irregularities in the process. Vanessa's attorney, Graham Powell, stood next. Your Honor, these claims are merely the desperate attempts of a daughter unhappy with her father's valid testamentary decisions. The will was properly executed with all legal formalities observed. Mr. Turner clearly expressed his wishes to leave control of his company to his stepson, whom he had grown to trust with his business affairs. Judge Vasquez's expression remained impassive. Mr. Dawson, you've submitted an affidavit claiming the will was signed under concerning circumstances. Would you care to elaborate? Howard stood, visibly nervous but determined. Yes, Your Honor. Richard Turner was heavily medicated the day the will was signed. He was confused and barely able to hold the pen. Furthermore, I was coerced into facilitating this signing through blackmail by Mrs. Turner. The courtroom erupted in murmurs until Judge Vasquez called for order. These are serious allegations, Mr. Dawson. You realize you're admitting to professional misconduct? I do, Your Honor, Howard replied solemnly. I've already self-reported to the Bar Association and will accept whatever consequences are deemed appropriate. But I couldn't allow this fraud to continue. As the hearing proceeded, our evidence mounted. Dr. Patel's testimony about the arsenic found in Dad's medication samples, Detective Rivera's report on the corporate documents Vanessa and Vincent had attempted to destroy, and Sophie's financial analysis showing the connections to Westco Development. Throughout it all, Vanessa maintained a calm facade, occasionally whispering to her attorney or shaking her head slightly at particularly damning revelations. But I could see the calculation behind her eyes, the growing realization that her carefully constructed scheme was unraveling. Your Honor, Powell argued desperately, many of these allegations are part of an ongoing criminal investigation and should not be considered in a civil proceeding about the validity of a will. My client is entitled to the presumption of innocence. Mr. Powell, Judge Vasquez replied dryly, this is not a criminal trial determining your client's guilt or innocence. This is a hearing to determine whether there are sufficient grounds to invalidate a will and establish temporary control of business assets. The evidence presented is certainly relevant to those questions. After nearly 3 hours of arguments and testimony, Judge Vasquez called a brief recess to consider her. In the hallway outside, I stood with my supporters, trying to remain optimistic despite the knot of anxiety in my stomach. You did well in there, Judge Mills assured me. Vasquez is fair. She'll see through Vanessa's act. When court resumed, Judge Vasquez delivered her ruling with unwavering authority. Based on the substantial evidence presented, this court finds sufficient cause to temporarily invalidate the will dated 3 months ago, pending a full probate hearing. The overwhelming evidence of Mr. Turner's compromised capacity at the time of signing, combined with the troubling circumstances surrounding its execution, render its current enforcement untenable. I exhaled slowly, relief washing through me as she continued. Furthermore, the court grants temporary administrative control of Turner Construction to Nora Turner, as she appears to be the most appropriate party to preserve the company's assets and operations while these legal matters are resolved. This temporary appointment will remain in effect until the probate court makes a final determination regarding succession. Vanessa's composed mask slipped, her face contorting briefly with fury before she regained control. She leaned forward, whispering urgently to her attorney. Your Honor, Powell interjected, We intend to appeal this ruling immediately. That is your right, Mr. Powell, Judge Vasquez replied evenly. But the temporary orders will remain in effect during any appeal process. She fixed Vanessa with a penetrating stare. And Mrs. Turner, given the ongoing criminal investigation, I'm ordering you to surrender your passport and remain within the county pending resolution of these matters. The severity of the allegations warrants these precautions. As we exited the courtroom, the weight that had pressed on me since the will reading began to lift. We hadn't won the war yet, but this decisive battle had gone our way. Dad's company would remain under proper stewardship, while the full extent of Vanessa and Vincent's crimes was investigated. Congratulations, Michelle said, shaking my hand. This is a significant victory. It's just the beginning, I replied, watching Vanessa huddle with her attorney across the hall. She won't give up easily. No, Michelle agreed, but neither will we. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. Unlike Vanessa's earlier performance, I kept mine brief and professional. Today's ruling is a first step toward, preserving Richard Turner's legacy and the company he built. Turner Construction will continue serving its clients and community as we work through these legal challenges. As I walked to my car, Patricia texted, "Staff heard the news. Everyone's celebrating. When will you be back?" I smiled, typing my reply. On my way. Time to get back to work. The road ahead would still be challenging. Criminal proceedings against Vanessa and Vincent, legal action against Wesco for their role in the corporate espionage, rebuilding, client trust, and properly settling Dad's estate. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt confident that we would prevail. Dad's voice seemed to echo in my mind as I drove back to the office. Remember, Nora, in business and in life, it's not about avoiding storms. It's about learning to navigate through them. His foresight had provided the map. Now it was up to me to steer the ship he'd entrusted to my care. The news of Judge Vasquez's ruling spread quickly through Sacramento's business community. By the time I returned to Turner Construction, my inbox was flooded with messages from clients, partners, and even competitors. Some expressing support, others seeking reassurance about ongoing projects, and a few attempting to capitalize on the perceived instability. Walking through the office, I noticed a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The anxiety of the past few days had given way to cautious optimism. Employees who had been whispering in corners were now working with renewed focus. My temporary appointment as administrator had provided the stability they needed. The Westridge developers called, Patricia reported as I settled back into the office. They want to meet tomorrow to discuss their project's future. Set it up, I replied, and arrange a conference call with all our major clients for Friday. I want to address their concerns directly and transparently. Already on it, she nodded. Oh, and Detective Rivera called. They've executed a search warrant at your father's lake house. This surprised me. What are they looking for? I already retrieved the documents from the safe. He didn't say specifically, but mentioned they're following up on new evidence related to your father's medical condition. A chill ran through me. The possibility that Vanessa had been slowly poisoning Dad still felt surreal, like a plot from a crime novel rather than my family's reality. Yet Dr. Patel's findings left little room for doubt. Let me know if he calls back with more information, I said. I want to stay updated on the investigation. The rest of the day was a whirlwind of meetings, calls, and decisions as I worked to stabilize the company. By evening, we had reassured most of our major clients, established clear leadership for ongoing projects, and begun assessing the damage caused by Vanessa and Vincent's brief tenure. I was reviewing project timelines when Neil knocked on my door, his expression troubled. Sorry to bother you, Nora, but there's something you should see. He handed me a tablet displaying the website of Westco Development. Front and center was a press release announcing their groundbreaking new construction methodology, complete with technical specifications that were unmistakably my father's work. "They're not even trying to hide it," I said, anger rising as I scrolled through the details. "This is Dad's foundation reinforcement system, word for word." "That's what I thought," Neil confirmed. "They're presenting it as their own innovation, planning to use it on their new downtown project." I handed the tablet back to him. "Send this to our legal team immediately. We need to file for an injunction first thing tomorrow." After Neil left, I sat back, thinking through the implications. Westco's brazen theft confirmed what we'd suspected. They believed they could act with impunity, assuming the chaos at Turner Construction would prevent us from defending our intellectual property. "They have no idea what they're in for," I murmured, reaching for the phone to call Michelle Lang. The next morning, local business news was dominated by two headlines. "Turner Construction Heir Regains Control After Fraud Allegations," and "Westco Faces Injunction Over Alleged Stolen Technology." The story was gaining traction, drawing attention not just to the family drama, but to the corporate espionage aspects. I arrived at the office early to prepare for the Westridge developers meeting, only to find Patricia already there, monitoring news coverage and managing the influx of media inquiries. "You look like you've been here all night," I observed, setting a coffee on her desk. "Nearly," she admitted, "but it's worth it. Look at this. The Architectural Innovation Forum just pulled Vincent's invitation to speak at their conference next month. They've asked you to take his place." The swift reversal was satisfying but secondary to our core priorities. "We need to focus on our clients and projects first. The industry recognition will follow if we handle this correctly." "Speaking of clients," Patricia said, "the Westridge team is already in the conference room. They're early." The Westridge development was our largest ongoing project, a mixed-use complex that would transform a formerly industrial area into a sustainable urban village. My father had won the contract just before his diagnosis, seeing it as the crowning achievement of his career. I straightened my blazer and grabbed my presentation materials. Let's not keep them waiting. The tension in the conference room was evident as I entered. Frank Westridge, the project's primary investor, sat at the head of the table, flanked by his development team. His expression was guarded, but not hostile. "Nora," he greeted me, standing to shake my hand. "Quite a situation you found yourself in." "Indeed," I replied calmly, "but not one without resolution. Thank you for coming in today." "To be frank," he said, returning to his seat, "we're concerned about the stability of this project. The headlines about your family company aren't exactly reassuring to our investors." I nodded, acknowledging his concern. "Completely understandable. That's why I wanted to meet in person rather than let rumors and news reports shape your perspective." For the next hour, I walked them through the current status of Turner Construction, the legal protections now in place, and most importantly, our unwavering commitment to the Westridge project. I was transparent about the challenges while emphasizing our concrete steps to address them. "The intellectual property concerns are particularly worrying," Frank noted. "If your designs were compromised—" "They weren't," I interrupted confidently. "My father created Turner Legacy Holdings specifically to protect his innovations. The methods and designs for your project are secure and legally protected, regardless of what's happening with Turner Construction more broadly." Frank exchanged glances with his team. "And you control this legacy company?" "I am the sole owner," I confirmed, "which means your project has continued uninterrupted access to the proprietary methods that made our bid so competitive in the first place." The atmosphere in the room shifted perceptibly from concern to cautious relief. After a few more questions about timelines and contingency plans, Frank leaned back, his decision apparently made. "Your father always said you were the future of Turner Construction," he remarked, Looks like that future arrived sooner than expected, but based on what I'm seeing today, the company is in capable hands. Thank you, I replied, genuinely touched by the vote of confidence. This project meant everything to my father. Completing it to his standards is personal for me. As they left, Frank paused at the door. By the way, Vincent, or whatever. His name is, tried to contact us yesterday, claiming he could still deliver on the contract through Westco instead. Thought you should know. The revelation didn't surprise me, but it confirmed they were moving aggressively to poach our clients. I appreciate the heads up. Back in my office, I found a message from Detective Rivera asking me to call him. I did so immediately. Ms. Turner, he began without preamble when he answered, we've found something interesting at the lake house. Are you able to come to the station this afternoon? I can be there at 4, I confirmed, curiosity piqued. May I ask what you found? I'd rather show you in person, he replied, but it appears your father was gathering his own evidence before he died. After hanging up, I spent the afternoon in back-to-back meetings with project managers, reviewing the status of each active construction site. The crisis had caused some delays, but nothing catastrophic. Most importantly, the uncertainty that had paralyzed decision-making during Vanessa and Vincent's brief control was dissipating. At precisely 4 o'clock, I arrived at the police station, where Detective Rivera led me to a small conference room. On the table was an evidence bag containing what looked like a small black device. Do you recognize this? He asked. I examined it through the plastic. It looks like a hidden camera, the kind used for home security. Exactly, Rivera confirmed. We found 3 of them at your father's lake house, professionally installed in the main living areas. Based on the timestamps, they were placed there about 5 months ago. That would have been right after his diagnosis, I noted. Who installed them? That's where it gets interesting. We traced the purchase to your father's credit card. He apparently hired a private security firm to install them secretly. Rivera placed a USB drive on the table. This was hidden in the duck decoy in his study, a different compartment than the one where you found the safe deposit key. My heartbeat quickened. Have you viewed the contents? Some of it, Rivera nodded. It contains archived footage. From these cameras, primarily focusing on conversations between Vanessa and Vincent when they thought they were alone at the lake house. He connected the drive to a laptop and played a video file dated about 3 months ago. The footage showed the lake house living room where Vanessa and Vincent sat drinking wine, speaking candidly about their plans. Once Richard signs the new will, we're set, Vanessa was saying on the recording. Howard's too compromised to back out now. And if the daughter becomes a problem? Vincent asked. Vanessa's smile on the video sent chills down my spine. She won't be in a position to do anything. By the time Richard is gone, we'll have full control of the company and its assets. She'll get her books and her sentimental trinkets, nothing more. Westco's offer is substantial, Vincent noted, refilling his glass. $5 million for the foundation reinforcement system alone, plus percentages on its implementation. That's just the beginning, Vanessa replied. Once we control Turner Construction, we can sell it piece by piece for maximum profit. Richard has no idea how valuable his innovations really are on the open market. The video continued with them discussing specific plans to liquidate company assets and transfer intellectual property to competitors. They mentioned names, dates, planned transactions, all recorded in high definition with clear audio. When Rivera stopped the playback, I sat in stunned silence for a moment. My father knew, I finally said. He suspected them and set this up to gather evidence. Very methodically, Rivera agreed. The videos span several months. Some are difficult to watch. There's footage of them discussing his medication, determining dosages that would, in their words, speed things along without raising suspicion. Fury and grief collided within me. You have them on conspiracy to commit murder. It's all right there. We do, Rivera confirmed grimly, along with fraud, corporate espionage, and a host of other charges. The district attorney is preparing an expanded case against both of them based on this new evidence. What about Vanessa's bail? She's currently free. Not for much longer, Rivera assured me. We're seeking an emergency revocation based on these recordings. The DA is meeting with the judge as we speak. I thought of my father, declining and vulnerable, yet methodically gathering evidence to protect his company and his legacy. Even as his body failed him, his mind remained sharp, his foresight uncanny. He knew he might not live to see justice done, I realized aloud. He was leaving a trail for me to follow. Your father was a remarkable man, Rivera said quietly. These recordings don't just document crimes. They tell the story of someone fighting to protect what he built and the daughter he loved, even as his health failed. As I left the police station, emotions threatened to overwhelm me. I pulled over a few blocks away, finally allowing myself to feel the full weight of everything that had happened. The tears came then, not just grief for my father, but rage at what had been done to him and a profound sense of connection to his final acts of protection and love. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking: police seek revocation of bail for widow in Turner inheritance case. Events were moving. Quickly now, the truth emerging into public view. Another message followed. From Sophie. Check your email. Westco stock is plummeting on news of the injunction and potential corporate espionage charges. I pulled up the business news on my phone to see Westco's stock chart showing a sharp decline. The company had issued a hasty statement, temporarily withdrawing their new construction methodology pending clarification of intellectual property concerns. After years in business, Dad had often told me that reputation was a company's most valuable and fragile asset. Westco was learning that lesson the hard way, their credibility crumbling as their connection to Vanessa and Vincent's scheme became public knowledge. By the time I composed myself and continued back to the office, another news alert appeared. Arrest warrant issued for Vanessa Turner after new evidence in husband's death. Justice was coming swiftly now, the careful groundwork, laid by my father and our subsequent actions bearing fruit. As painful as this process had been, the truth was finally emerging, not just in a lawyer's office, but in court records, news headlines, and criminal investigations. Back at Turner Construction, I found the executive team gathered in the conference room, monitoring the breaking news coverage. You've seen the reports? Patricia asked as I joined them. I nodded. Detective Rivera showed me the evidence they found. It's conclusive. The news is saying they're looking for Vanessa now, Neil said. Apparently, she's not at your father's house or her attorney's office. A knot of concern formed in my stomach. She might be trying to flee. The judge ordered her to surrender. Her passport, but... My thought was interrupted by my phone ringing, a blocked number. I answered cautiously. Hello, Nora. Vanessa's voice was eerily calm. I see you've been busy uncovering your father's little surveillance project. My blood ran cold. Where are you, Vanessa? Somewhere the police won't find me easily, she replied. But don't worry, I'm not leaving town just yet. We have unfinished business, you and I. The only business left is you facing justice for what you did to my father, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Her laugh was chilling. Justice is such a subjective concept. Before this is over, you might want to reconsider what winning really looks like in this situation. Is that a threat? Let's call it a reality check, she replied. Your father was clever with his recordings and his secret company. I'll give him that. But I've been playing this game much longer than either of you. The police are looking. For you right now, I reminded her. I'm sure they are, she said dismissively. But before they find me, ask yourself this. How sure are you that you've uncovered all my contingency plans? Richard wasn't the only one who knew how to hide things. The line went dead before I could respond. I immediately called Detective Rivera, relating the conversation word for word. "We're tracing the call now," he assured me. "Don't worry, we'll find her." But as I rejoined the executive team, Vanessa's words echoed in my mind. What other plans had she put in place? What else might she have done that we hadn't yet discovered? Patricia noticed my troubled expression. "What is it?" "Vanessa just called me," I explained. "She implied she has some sort of backup plan we haven't uncovered yet." Neil frowned. "Like what? The will's been invalidated, her role in your father's death is exposed, and Westco is backing away from their deal with her." "I don't know," I admitted, but she sounded too confident for someone whose schemes are collapsing around her. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an email alert from our IT department. "Urgent. Potential security breach detected in project. Server." I opened the message immediately, skimming its contents with growing alarm. Our IT team had discovered a dormant program embedded in our main project server, malware designed to corrupt or delete files upon remote activation. She's going after our project files, I realized. If she can't profit from them, she's trying to destroy them. Within minutes, we had our IT security team working to neutralize the threat while backing up all critical data to secure servers. It was a race against time, with Vanessa potentially able to trigger the malware from wherever she was hiding. The first consequences of exposing Vanessa and Vincent's scheme were becoming clear. Not just legal repercussions, but desperate countermeasures from a woman with nothing left to lose. The victory we'd achieved in court and in public opinion was real, but Vanessa's final moves in this deadly game were still unfolding. As night fell over Sacramento, the hunt for Vanessa continued. Our IT team worked feverishly to protect our systems, and I remained at the office, coordinating our response to this latest threat. The battle for my father's legacy wasn't over, yet. But with each passing hour, Vanessa's options dwindled while our position strengthened. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, we were holding the line, protecting what my father had built, and uncovering the full truth of what had been done to him. With each revelation, his final, careful plans proved more prescient, his love and protection extending beyond the grave to guide me through the darkest moments of this ordeal. "We've contained the malware," reported Lisa Chen, our head of IT, security, her eyes red-rimmed from hours of concentrated work. It was nearly 2 a.m., and a small crisis team had remained at the office through the night, working to neutralize Vanessa's digital time bomb. The good news is we caught it before activation. The bad news is it's sophisticated, professionally, designed to corrupt data in ways that would look like gradual file degradation rather than an obvious attack. "Could we have detected it earlier?" I asked, nursing what felt like my 20th cup of coffee. Lisa shook her head. "It was expertly hidden within legitimate system files, dormant until triggered. We only found it because we were specifically looking for sabotage after your warning." "Can we trace where it came from?" "That's where it gets interesting," Lisa said, pulling up a log file on her laptop. The program was installed approximately 2 months ago, using Vincent's login credentials. But the digital signature suggests it wasn't created by him. This has the hallmarks of a professional hacker group based in Eastern Europe. Neil frowned. "So they outsourced their sabotage?" "Appears that way," Lisa confirmed, "and they paid well for it. This level of stealth malware isn't cheap or common." I processed this information, the pieces clicking together. They were creating a failsafe. If they couldn't control the company, they'd destroy its most valuable digital assets. I turned to Neil. "What about our physical backups, the off-site storage for project files?" "I checked," he replied grimly. "Several key boxes are missing from the storage facility. The log shows Vincent removed them last week, claiming he needed to reference historical projects." Patricia, who had insisted on staying despite my urging her to go home, spoke up. So, they were planning this for months, a complete scorched earth fallback if their takeover failed. It fits their pattern, I agreed, but they didn't count on Dad's recordings or our quick response. I stood up, stretching muscles stiff from hours of tension. What's our recovery position, Lisa? We've isolated all systems, completed a full backup to new secure servers, and established enhanced monitoring. We're rebuilding the project databases from the most recent clean backups. There will be some data loss, but nothing catastrophic. It was better news than I'd feared. And our ongoing projects? Site managers have paper backup copies of critical plans, Neil confirmed. Standard procedure your father implemented years ago. We can continue construction while the digital systems are fully restored. I felt a surge of gratitude for Dad's old-school insistence on physical backups, a practice Vincent had apparently mocked as outdated. Now it was saving the company from digital sabotage. Any updates on Vanessa's whereabouts? I asked Patricia. Nothing concrete. Police tracked the call to a burner phone, last active near the industrial district. They're searching, but no sign of her yet. I checked my watch. Nearly 2:30 a.m. now. Everyone should get some rest. We've contained the immediate threat. Tomorrow we'll need to communicate with clients about any potential delays and continue working with the authorities. As the team dispersed, Patricia lingered. You should sleep too, Nora. You've been going nonstop for days. I will, I promised. Just need to organize my thoughts first. Alone in the quiet office, I returned to Dad's desk, my desk now, and opened his leather-bound journal. I'd found it in his study drawer, a daily record of his thoughts and decisions during his final months. Tonight, I turned to the entries from 2 months ago, around when the malware was installed. Vincent asked more questions about the server architecture today, Dad had written. His sudden interest in IT infrastructure seems conveniently timed, with Vanessa's suggestion that we modernize our backup systems. They think I don't notice their whispered conversations or the way they stop talking when I enter a room. But I see everything. The medication fogs my mind sometimes, but in the clear moments, I'm documenting it all. The cameras are working perfectly. If something happens to me, Nora will find what she needs. I continued reading, a lump forming in my throat as Dad's private thoughts revealed his growing awareness of the conspiracy against him, paired with his methodical efforts to create safeguards. Even as his body failed him, his mind had remained sharp, focused on protecting his legacy and my future. Called Judge Mills today, read another entry. Turner Legacy Holdings is properly established now. The key patents and intellectual property are secure. Vanessa knows nothing about it. She's too focused on the visible assets to notice the invisible ones. That's always been her weakness. She sees the building but not the foundation that gives it strength. A noise from the outer office startled me. I checked the time, nearly 3 a.m. now. Everyone should have left. Hello? I called, setting down the journal and moving cautiously toward the door. No response, but I heard another sound, the subtle click of a door closing somewhere down the hall. Instinct told me something was wrong. I reached for my phone to call security, but before I could dial, the office lights went out, plunging the room into darkness. Power outage? No. The small status lights on the computer equipment still glowed in the darkness. Someone had cut only the lighting circuits. Heart pounding, I moved silently toward the emergency exit, guided by the dim glow of exit signs. The building should have been empty except for the night security guard, who made hourly rounds. I needed to reach him or get outside to call for help. I had just reached the stairwell door when a voice froze me in place. Going somewhere, Nora? Vanessa stood at the end of the hallway, her silhouette barely visible in the emergency lighting. She looked different, hair pulled back severely, dressed in dark clothing rather than her usual polished attire. The police are looking for you, I said. keeping my voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through me. Yes, they're quite determined, she replied, moving slowly toward me. But not very imaginative. They're watching airports, train stations, highways. No one thought to check the service entrance of Turner Construction, a building I'm still legally associated with. I kept the stairwell door at my back, ready to push through it if she came closer. What do you want, Vanessa? Originally, to quietly collect what's mine and disappear. Her voice had lost its cultivated warmth, replaced by something colder and more authentic. Your father's company, his money, his innovations, I earned them. 2 years of playing the devoted wife while he droned on about concrete mixtures and load-bearing calculations. So you decided to poison him, I said flatly. Speed things along. She shrugged, the casual gesture chilling in context. He was dying anyway. I simply optimized the timeline. It would have all gone perfectly if not for his paranoid recordings and your unexpected persistence. And now what? You've come to destroy whatever you can before you run? Something like that. In the dim light, I could see she was holding something, a small device that looked like a remote control. Vincent may be in custody, but he wasn't the brains of this operation. I've been acquiring wealthy men's assets for longer than you've been alive, Nora. Your father was just another target, albeit a particularly lucrative one. I thought of the newspaper articles Sophie had found about Vanessa's previous husbands. Harold Mercer and Thomas Ellis, your other victims. Among others, she acknowledged with disturbing pride. But that's ancient history. Right now, my concern is ensuring that if I can't have Turner Construction's assets, no one can, especially not you. She held up the device. Do you know what this is? The trigger for the backup plan. Your IT team found the first layer of malware, yes, but not the second. While Vincent distracted everyone with his obvious sabotage, I planted something far more elegant in your CRM system, a program that will scramble all client records, destroying relationships built over decades. At the same time, it will transfer significant funds from your corporate accounts to untraceable offshore holdings. My mind raced. Lisa had been focused on the project servers, not the client management systems. We'd missed Vanessa's secondary attack vector. You won't get away with this, I said, stalling while I tried to think of a way to alert security without provoking her to activate the device. I already have, multiple times, she countered. The only unusual aspect of this situation is that I'm explaining it to you. But I wanted you to understand exactly how thoroughly I've outplayed you and your father. As she spoke, I noticed a shadow moving behind her, barely perceptible in the dim light, but definitely there. Someone else was in the hallway. My father outplayed you the moment he created Turner Legacy Holdings, I said loudly, hoping to cover any sounds from the approaching figure. Even if you destroy our client records, the intellectual property is secure. Vanessa's laugh was cold. Client relationships are the lifeblood of any business. Without them, your precious patents and methods are just theoretical concepts. In 6 months, Turner Construction will be bankrupt, and I'll acquire the remains for pennies through a shell company. The shadow grew closer. I kept talking, maintaining eye contact with Vanessa. You underestimated him in life, and you're underestimating his legacy now. Dad built this company on more than just records in a database. How touching, Vanessa mocked, finger hovering over the device's button. Any last words before I— Police! Don't move! Detective Rivera's voice rang out as he emerged from the shadows, gun trained on Vanessa. Drop the device now! Vanessa's expression shifted from confident to calculating in an instant. Rather than complying, she turned toward Rivera, using the movement to obscure her hand as she pressed the button. It's done, she announced with grim satisfaction. Too late, detective. Rivera moved forward, handcuffing her while another officer emerged from the stairwell behind me. As they secured Vanessa, I ran back to the office to check our systems, heart pounding with dread. Lisa had remained in the IT department and was already on the phone when I burst in. "We've got another breach," she confirmed, fingers flying over her keyboard. "CRM system and accounting servers. Can you stop it?" "Working on it," she replied tensely. "The good news is we implemented additional firewalls after finding the first malware. It's slowing down the execution, but not stopping it completely." I called Neil and our CFO, Karen Walsh, alerting them to the situation. Within 30 minutes, our crisis team had reassembled, working frantically to counter Vanessa's final attack. While police officers collected evidence and took statements, "We've managed to isolate the financial system," Karen reported as dawn broke. "The transfers were initiated, but we caught them in time. No funds have left our accounts." "The CRM system is another story," Lisa added grimly. "The malware executed about 60% of its programming before we contained it. Client records from the past 5 years are corrupted, possibly irretrievably." The severity of the damage sank in. Our client relationships were central to the company's operations. Without that historical data, contact information, project preferences, billing histories, communication logs, we would essentially be starting from scratch with hundreds of clients. "What about backups?" I asked, clinging to hope. "The malware was designed to corrupt the backups first," Lisa explained. "Very methodical. It's been dormant in the system for weeks, quietly making changes to the backup files so we wouldn't notice until it was too late." Detective Rivera approached as we were assessing the damage. "We've taken Mrs. Turner into custody," he reported. "Found 3 different IDs and a significant amount of cash in her possession. She was clearly planning to flee." "And the device she used?" "Our tech team is analyzing it now. Preliminary assessment suggests it's a custom remote trigger, probably linked specifically to your systems." I nodded, processing this information while trying to formulate our next steps. "Thank you for arriving when you did, Detective. How did you know to come here?" "We received an anonymous tip that Vanessa had been spotted near the building," he explained. "Given the threats she made earlier, we responded immediately. I'm just sorry we couldn't prevent her from activating the device." As Rivera left, to coordinate the evidence collection, I gathered our team to develop a response plan. "We need to approach this methodically," I began. "First priority is assessing exactly what client data we've lost and what we can recover." "I may have a partial solution," Patricia interjected. "Your father was old school about record keeping. He insisted on quarterly printouts of our most critical client information, contact details, project histories, contract terms. They're stored in the archive room." A surge of hope pushed through my exhaustion. "How recent are the latest printouts?" "Last quarter," Patricia confirmed. "We'll be missing the most recent updates, but it gives us a foundation." Neil nodded enthusiastically. "And each project manager maintains their own notes and records. Between those and the paper archives, we could reconstruct maybe 80–90% of the critical information." "It will be labor-intensive," Karen cautioned. "We're talking about manually re-entering data for hundreds of clients." "Then we'll divide and conquer," I decided. "Set up teams to handle different client categories. We'll prioritize active projects first, then recent clients, then historical records." As the team dispersed to implement this plan, I took a moment alone in Dad's office, drawing strength from the space he had occupied for so many years. Vanessa had tried to destroy what he built, targeting not just the physical assets, but the relationships that formed the true foundation of Turner Construction. But in her arrogance, she had overlooked something fundamental. The company wasn't just digital records and bank accounts. It was people, employees who had worked alongside my father for years, clients who trusted the Turner name, and a culture of resilience that couldn't be corrupted by malware. With renewed determination, I rejoined the recovery effort, For the next 12 hours, our entire staff mobilized to reconstruct our client records. Project managers retrieved personal notes, site supervisors called in data from the field, and administrative staff organized a systematic approach to rebuilding our databases from paper records. By evening, we had established a clear picture of the damage and our recovery path. We would need to personally contact each client, explain the situation, and verify their information. It would take weeks to fully rebuild, but it was possible, and in the process, we would actually strengthen many client relationships through personal outreach. As I finally prepared to leave for some much-needed rest, Detective Rivera called with an update. "We finished our initial interrogation of Vanessa Turner," he reported. "She's not cooperating regarding the corporate espionage, but our forensic accountants have traced financial connections to at least 2 executives at Wesco Development." "So they were directly involved," I confirmed. "Appears so. We're obtaining warrants now. This case has expanded well beyond family fraud. It's shaping up to be one of the largest corporate espionage cases in the state's history." After hanging up, I sent a message to our legal team to prepare for possible legal action against Westco. Their complicity in Vanessa and Vincent's scheme deserved consequences beyond just the criminal charges. Driving home in the quiet of night, exhaustion finally catching up with me, I reflected on the whirlwind of the past days. Vanessa had been caught, her final desperate attempt to destroy the company thwarted. Vincent remained in custody, facing multiple serious charges. The truth about my father's death and the fraudulent will had been exposed. Things were far from perfect. We faced weeks of recovery efforts, legal proceedings, and rebuilding client trust. But Turner Construction would survive, and the legacy my father had fought so hard to protect remained intact. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone chimed with a message from Patricia. "Just found this in your father's calendar. Thought you should see it tonight." Attached was a photo of a handwritten note in Dad's distinctive script, apparently written shortly before his death. "Nora, when the storm passes, as it eventually will, remember that buildings are just structures. What matters are the foundations we lay, the relationships we build, and the legacy we leave in the lives we touch. You've always been my greatest legacy. Trust yourself, as I have always trusted you. Dad." Tears blurred my vision as I read his final message to me. Through all the chaos, the betrayal, and the painful revelations, my father's wisdom and love continued to guide me forward. The inheritance that truly mattered couldn't be stolen or corrupted. It lived on in the values he had instilled in me and the strength he had helped me discover in myself. 3 months after Vanessa's arrest, I stood at the podium in our newly renovated conference room, facing the assembled employees of Turner Construction. The room was filled to capacity, with staff from all departments gathered for this important announcement. "Thank you all for coming," I began, looking out at the familiar faces that had become like family over these challenging months. "Today marks an important milestone for our company. As you know, the court has formally invalidated the fraudulent will and confirmed me as the rightful heir to Turner Construction." A round of applause broke out, genuine and heartfelt. These people had stood by me through the darkest days, working tirelessly to rebuild what Vanessa and Vincent had tried to destroy. More importantly, I continued when the applause subsided, the merger of Turner Construction with Turner Legacy Holdings is now complete. The 2 companies my father created, one visible, one hidden, are now unified under a single structure that preserves his vision while securing our future. The legal process had been complex but necessary. By formally combining the 2 entities, we had created a stronger, more resilient organization with clear ownership and protected intellectual property. I'm also pleased to announce that the Westridge development is back on schedule, with the foundation work beginning next week. This news elicited another round of applause. Our flagship project, temporarily delayed by the crisis, was moving forward with renewed momentum. None of this would have been possible without your extraordinary efforts, I acknowledged, my voice thick with emotion. When our client records were compromised, you worked day and night to rebuild them. When our projects faced uncertainty, you reassured clients and maintained our standards of excellence. When everything was in chaos, you showed up and did your jobs with professionalism and dedication. I paused, looking around the room at the people who had become my strongest supporters. Patricia with her unwavering loyalty, Neil and his project teams who had kept construction moving despite the turmoil, Lisa and the IT department who had secured our systems against future threats, Karen and the finance team who had protected our assets. My father built this company on relationships, integrity, and innovation, I continued. Those values sustained us through this crisis and will guide us forward. Today, I want to share our vision for the future of Turner Construction. For the next 30 minutes, I outlined our strategic plan, expanding into sustainable construction, investing in emerging technologies, establishing a scholarship fund for students pursuing careers in architecture and engineering. With each initiative, I could feel the enthusiasm in the room growing, a shared excitement for what lay ahead. Finally, I concluded, I'm establishing the Richard Turner Foundation for Architectural Innovation, funded with 10% of our annual profits. This foundation will continue my father's legacy of pushing boundaries in construction methods while supporting community development in underserved areas. As the presentation ended and employees filtered out to return to their work, Patricia approached with a proud smile. "Your father would have loved that presentation," she said, "especially the foundation. He always wanted to give back more directly." "I think so too," I agreed. "It feels right, honoring his vision while moving the company forward." My new office, adjacent to what had been Dad's, reflected this balance between honoring the past and embracing the future. I'd kept his antique desk, but paired it with modern ergonomic chairs. His collection of architectural models shared space with cutting-edge 3D renderings of our current projects. The wooden duck decoy that had hidden his secrets now sat on a shelf beside my own mementos, a visible reminder of his foresight and protection. Later that afternoon, I met with Michelle Lang to discuss the ongoing legal proceedings against Wesco Development. "The criminal case against Vanessa and Vincent is proceeding smoothly," Michelle reported as we reviewed the latest updates. "With the video evidence and financial documentation, the prosecution has an exceptionally strong case. They're both facing significant prison time." "And Wesco?" I asked. "That's where it gets interesting." Michelle smiled, a predatory gleam in her eye. "Their CEO and COO have been indicted for corporate espionage and conspiracy. Their stock has dropped 40%. Their reputation is in tatters, and 3 major clients have already canceled contracts." I nodded, satisfied with the consequences they were facing for their role in my father's suffering. "What about our civil suit?" "We're in a stronger position than ever," Michelle confirmed. "Their lawyers reached out this morning with a settlement offer, $75 million plus a public apology and commitment never to use any Turner construction methods." The figure was substantial, but I wasn't interested in a quick resolution. "Decline it," I instructed. "I want discovery to proceed. Let's see exactly how deep their involvement went and who else might have been part of this conspiracy." Michelle nodded, unsurprised by my decision. "I had a feeling you'd say that. I'll inform them that we're proceeding to trial." After she left, I walked to the window overlooking the city my father had helped build. Turner construction projects dotted the skyline: the Peterson Tower with its distinctive curved glass, the Riverwalk development that had transformed the waterfront, the Community Arts Center that had won multiple design awards. Each structure represented not just architectural achievement, but the values Dad had embedded in the company: quality, innovation, integrity. A knock at the door interrupted my reflection. It was Judge Mills, arriving for our scheduled meeting. "Nora," he greeted me warmly. "The place looks different. Richard would approve of the changes." "Thank you," I said, gesturing for him to sit. "I'm trying to find the right balance, respecting his legacy while making the company my own." "That's why I'm here, actually," Judge Mills said, placing a folder on the desk between us. "These are the final documents related to your father's estate. With the fraudulent will invalidated and the legitimate one accepted by the court, everything is now officially yours: the company, the properties, the remaining financial assets." I opened the folder, scanning the legal documents that formalized what we had fought so hard to establish. "It feels strange," I admitted, "after months of fighting for this, to have it resolved with signatures on paper." Judge Mills nodded, understanding. "Legal resolutions are often anticlimactic that way, but don't underestimate the significance of this moment, Nora. Your father's wishes have been honored. Justice has been served." "Not completely," I noted. "The criminal trials are still pending." "True," "but Vanessa and Vincent are behind bars. The company is secure in your hands, and your father's legacy is intact." Those were his primary concerns. After completing the paperwork, Judge Mills prepared to leave but paused at the door. "Your father once told me that his greatest achievement wasn't any building or innovation, but raising a daughter who embodied the best of him and your mother. Seeing you now, leading this company with such strength and vision, I understand exactly what he meant." His words stayed with me throughout the day, offering comfort and validation during quiet moments between meetings and decisions. The past months had transformed me, forcing me to draw on reserves of strength I hadn't known I possessed. The naive trust I'd once had was gone, replaced by a more discerning judgment of character and situations. Yet I'd managed to avoid becoming cynical or bitter, something I knew would have disappointed Dad deeply. That evening, I left the office at a reasonable hour, a new practice I'd established after the crisis subsided. Dad had always emphasized the importance of balance, though he'd struggled to achieve it himself in his later years. I was determined to learn from both his successes and his challenges. I drove not to my apartment but to the lake house, which had been cleared by police and returned to the estate months ago. I hadn't visited since retrieving the documents from the floor safe what felt like a lifetime ago. Now, with the legal matters settled and the company stabilized, it felt right to return to this place that had meant so much to Dad. The cabin looked just as I remembered: rustic, welcoming, peaceful. Inside, everything remained largely as it had been during our last visit together, before his illness had advanced too far for travel. His fishing gear still hung by the door, his favorite books lined the shelves, his worn leather chair faced the lake view he'd loved. I moved through the rooms slowly, not changing anything yet, simply reconnecting with the space and the memories it held. In the kitchen, I found the coffee mug he'd always used, a chipped ceramic one with "World's Best Dad" painted in my childish handwriting, a Father's Day gift from decades ago. He'd refused to replace it even when I'd offered to buy him a nicer one as an adult. On the deck overlooking the lake, I watched the sunset paint the water in shades of orange and gold. This had been Dad's favorite time of day here, what he called the golden hour. We'd often sit together in comfortable silence, simply appreciating the beauty in each other's company. "I wish you could see how things turned out," I said softly to the empty chair beside me. "We saved the company. Your plan worked. Turner Legacy Holdings protected everything important until we could expose what they were doing." The wind rustled through the pine trees, a soothing sound that had always calmed Dad during stressful periods. "The hardest part was learning how they betrayed your trust," I continued, finding comfort in speaking aloud the things I wished I could tell him. "But the best part was discovering how thoroughly you'd prepared, how you'd thought of everything to protect me and your legacy even when you were suffering." As darkness fell, I went inside and built a fire in the stone fireplace, another ritual Dad had cherished. Sitting before the dancing flames, I made a decision. I would keep the lake house, restoring what needed updating but preserving its essential character. This would remain a place of connection to Dad and the values he'd instilled in me. My phone chimed with a message from Patricia. "Just checking in. How's the lake house?" "Peaceful," I replied. "Exactly what I needed. See you tomorrow." I added another log to the fire and opened Dad's dog-eared copy of Thoreau's Walden, finding comfort in the familiar passages he'd underlined over the years. Tomorrow would bring new challenges at Turner Construction, projects to oversee, decisions to make, a company to lead. But tonight was for reflection, for honoring the journey that had brought me here, and for appreciating the new equilibrium I had found after the storm. The cabin creaked and settled around me, a sound Dad had always called the house getting comfortable. I smiled at the memory, feeling a sense of peace that had been absent for months. The inheritance that truly mattered, Dad's wisdom, his values, his love, couldn't be stolen or corrupted. It lived within me, guiding my decisions and shaping my leadership of the company he had entrusted to my care. Outside, the lake reflected a sky full of stars, constant and enduring, just like the foundation Dad had built and I would continue to strengthen in the years to come. 1 year to the day after the fateful will reading that had upended my life, I stood at my father's grave, a bouquet of his favorite blue hydrangeas in my hands. The cemetery was quiet on this sunny morning, birds singing in the oak trees that provided dappled shade across the manicured grounds. "It's been quite a year, Dad," I said softly, placing the flowers against his headstone. "I wish I could tell you everything that's happened." So much had changed since that devastating afternoon in Howard Dawson's office. The initial shock and betrayal had given way to determination, then justice, and finally a hard-won peace. The company Dad had built was not only secure, but thriving under my leadership, growing in directions he would have approved while remaining true to the core values he had established. I sat on the small bench beside his grave, taking a moment for reflection before heading to the courthouse. Today would bring closure to one of the final chapters in this saga, Vanessa's sentencing hearing. The criminal trials ended last month. I told Dad, continuing our one-sided conversation. Vincent received 20 years for his role in the fraud, corporate espionage, and conspiracy. Wesco's CEO and COO both took plea deals. They'll serve 5 to 7 years and pay substantial restitution. The corporate espionage case had made national headlines, becoming a cautionary tale in business schools and legal circles. What had begun as a family tragedy had expanded into one of the largest white-collar crime cases in Sacramento's history. Vanessa's case was different, I continued. The jury found her guilty on all counts, including the most serious charge, murder by poisoning. That's what today's hearing is about. I had testified at her trial, describing the woman who had entered our lives with calculated precision, targeting Dad when he was vulnerable after years alone. The prosecution had presented overwhelming evidence, the arsenic in Dad's medication, the financial trails connecting her to Wesco, the damning video recordings Dad had made, and her prior history with other wealthy men who had died under suspicious circumstances. Throughout the trial, Vanessa had maintained her composure, showing emotion only when it served her purpose. Even when the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, she had remained stoic, her eyes briefly meeting mine across the courtroom with a cold defiance that sent chills down my spine. "I'm not going for vengeance," I assured Dad's memory. "Just closure. After today, we can truly move forward." I checked my watch, still an hour before I needed to be at the courthouse. Plenty of time to share the positive developments as well. Turner Construction won the bid for the new University Medical Center, I said with pride. "It's our largest project ever, and we're implementing your sustainable building methods throughout. The review committee specifically cited our innovative approach to energy efficiency as the deciding factor. The company's reputation had not only recovered from the scandal, but emerged stronger. Our transparency in handling the crisis, combined with our commitment to ethical business practices, had resonated with clients old and new. We broke ground on the affordable housing development last week, I continued. The one you always wanted to build in the East Side neighborhood. The Richard Turner Foundation is subsidizing a portion of the construction costs to keep the units affordable for working families. This project held special meaning. Dad had talked for years about creating quality housing that working-class families could afford, but had never found the right combination of funding and support. Establishing it as the Foundation's first major initiative felt like fulfilling a promise to him. Patricia is retiring next month, I added with a bittersweet smile. 30 years with Turner Construction. We're having a huge celebration for her. She's been my rock through all of this, Dad. I don't know what I would have done without her guidance. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead, and I took it as a sign that Dad was listening, wherever he was. I stood, brushing off my skirt, and taking a final moment before the headstone. I miss you every day, I said softly. But I feel you with me too. In the company, in the projects we're building, in the decisions I make. Your legacy lives on, stronger than ever. With that, I made my way back to my car for the drive downtown. The courthouse was already busy when I arrived, with media vans parked outside and reporters stationed on the steps. The sensational nature of the case, a black widow who had poisoned her wealthy husband to steal his company, had captured public attention from the beginning. I slipped in through a side entrance, avoiding the press as I'd learned to do over the past year. Inside, I found Detective Rivera waiting in the hallway outside the courtroom. Ms. Turner, he greeted me with a respectful nod. How are you holding up? I'm doing well, I replied honestly, ready for this to be finished. Understandable. He lowered his voice. Just wanted to let you know, the DA believes the judge will impose the maximum sentence. Your victim impact statement was very compelling. I had struggled with that statement, trying to find words that would convey the true cost of Vanessa's actions, not just my father's suffering and premature death, but the betrayal of trust, the attack on his legacy, and the pain inflicted on everyone who had loved him. It wasn't about punishment, I explained to Rivera. It was about truth. Dad deserved to have the real story told. The detective nodded understanding. Well, the truth has certainly come out. This case has changed how we approach suspected poisonings. Your father's foresight in documenting everything and securing those samples may save other lives in the future. That thought provided comfort as I entered the courtroom and took my seat in the front row. Howard Dawson was already there, nodding solemnly as I sat beside him. After providing crucial testimony about his role in the fraudulent will, he had faced disciplinary action from the Bar Association, a 6-month suspension and professional probation. It was a significant consequence, but far less than the disbarment he might have faced without his voluntary disclosure and cooperation. I didn't expect to see you here, I said quietly. I needed to see it through, he replied. For Richard, and for my own conscience. The courtroom filled quickly. Reporters, legal observers, and even some Turner Construction employees who had come to support me. Sophie slipped into the seat on my other side, giving my hand a supportive squeeze. The financial forensics team just confirmed the last of it, she whispered. We've traced all the money Vanessa siphoned off. Most can be recovered from the offshore accounts. Before I could respond, the bailiff called the court to order, and Judge Michaels entered. The proceedings moved with formal efficiency, statements from the prosecution and defense, a brief unapologetic allocution from Vanessa herself, and finally the judge's decision. Vanessa Marie Turner, Judge Michaels began, her voice stern. You have been convicted of murder in the first degree, fraud, conspiracy, corporate espionage, and multiple counts of financial crimes. The evidence presented at trial showed not only a cold, calculated plan to hasten Richard Turner's death for financial gain, but a pattern of similar behavior with previous victims. The judge paused, looking directly at Vanessa, who stood impassively between her attorneys. The court finds no mitigating circumstances in this case. Indeed, your lack of remorse and the calculated nature of your crimes are aggravating factors. Therefore, it is the sentence of this court that you be committed to the state penitentiary for life without the possibility of parole. A murmur ran through the courtroom, but I remained still, processing the finality of the judgment. It wouldn't bring Dad back or erase the pain of his betrayal and suffering, but it would ensure Vanessa could never target another vulnerable person, never again use charm and manipulation to destroy lives for profit. As Vanessa was led away in handcuffs, she turned slightly, her eyes finding mine for a brief moment. I expected to see anger or defiance, but instead caught something unexpected, a flicker of grudging respect. She had underestimated me, underestimated Dad's foresight, underestimated the strength of the company and relationships he had built. In the end, that miscalculation had been her downfall. Outside the courthouse, I made a brief statement to the waiting press. Today brings a measure of justice for my father, Richard Turner. He was a man of integrity who built his company on strong values and relationships. While nothing can undo the harm that was done to him, I'm grateful to the justice system, the investigators, and everyone who helped uncover the truth. Turner Construction will continue to honor his legacy through the projects we build and the way we conduct business. I declined further questions, leaving the media frenzy behind as I walked to my car. The weight that had rested on my shoulders for so long felt lighter now. One chapter was ending, allowing me to focus fully on the future. Back at the office, I found a small celebration underway, not for the sentencing, which felt too solemn for champagne, but for the news that had arrived during my absence. Turner Construction had been named Business of the Year by the Chamber of Commerce, with specific recognition for our ethical leadership and community investment. Your father would be so proud, Neil said, handing me the official notification. This is the validation of everything he stood for, and everything you've done to protect and build on his legacy. It's what we've all done together, I corrected, gently looking around at the team that had become like family. Dad always said a company is only as strong as its people. Later that evening, I stood on the balcony of my new home, a riverside property I'd purchased 3 months earlier. Unlike the house Dad had shared with Vanessa, which I'd sold immediately after gaining clear title, this place was entirely mine, reflecting my own taste and preferences while incorporating elements that honored my roots. Dad's first edition novels filled the bookshelves in my study. His grandfather's pocket watch, one of the few items from the fraudulent will that had actually been left to me, sat in a display case on my desk. Photos of us together throughout my life adorned the walls, alongside architectural drawings of significant Turner construction projects. The sun was setting over the river, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. I thought about the journey of the past year, from devastation to determination, from fighting for survival to leading with purpose. I had learned hard lessons about trust and betrayal, about resilience and strength, about the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people. Most importantly, I had come to understand that inheritance went far beyond physical assets or legal documents. Dad's true legacy lived in the values he had instilled in me, the knowledge he had shared, and the love that had shaped my character. Those gifts couldn't be stolen or corrupted by fraud or deception. My phone chimed with a message from Frank Westridge. Final approval came through for Phase 2. Ready when you are to break ground. I smiled, typing a quick response before turning back to the sunset. Tomorrow would bring new projects, new challenges, new opportunities to build on the foundation Dad had established. The wounds of betrayal had healed into wisdom, the pain of loss transformed into purpose. Dad had prepared me for this leadership role in ways I hadn't fully appreciated until faced with its challenges. His foresight in creating Turner Legacy. Holdings had saved the company, but his greatest preparation had been in shaping me to be the kind of leader who could weather the storm and emerge stronger. As darkness fell and lights began to twinkle along the riverfront, I raised my glass in a silent toast. To Dad, to the difficult journey we had navigated, and to the future we were building, one project at a time. The inheritance that matters? Most is still growing, I whispered into the evening air, and it always will be. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.